The story begins immediately with a battle. We see a depressed guy lying there, covered in blood, trying to ask our protagonist Han Kang-Chi something, but he simply had nothing to say. So he turned into a huge monster and went to attack Han Kang-Chi. In doing so, he called Khan garbage, and similar words. This really pissed Han off. So he activated the power on his arm and gave him a good charge right in the face. But before we know how the fight ends, we need to know his past. So we are transported back to a time when he was still in school. One fine day, he wondered if there was a job in which he could be a very good specialist, because in his studies he was not very strong. And suddenly, while walking home, he met two guys who noticed that he had a special aura and asked if he wanted to know the truth. Han didn't understand what the aura had to do with anything. The two then decided to rephrase the question and asked how much he had on him. When Khan said that he had nothing, the two men laughed and threatened him that he was now in big trouble, for the truth was worth a lot. Then they asked him again to give him a little help in a good way, or else it would be bad. Han Kang-Chi reiterated to the two men that he had nothing. Then one of them asked to pay only half of his share for the truth. Then the other one started muttering at him, because they had agreed that they would both get one. While those two were fighting amongst themselves, Han Kang-Chi decided to just walk away from those two back home. The two of them were furious that Han Kang-Chi had talked their teeth in and decided to run away, so they chased him down and grabbed him by his backpack. It also pissed them off so much that one of them punched Han Kang-Chi right in the face. When one of them started to swing at him again, Han Kang-Chi shouted for him to stop. With excitement, Han Kang-Chi accidentally swung his hand. Han Kang-Chi got right in the dude's face, which sent him flying at full speed into the wall. That brother got even more angry, and also ran at Han Kang-Chi to kill him for his brother. Han Kang-Chi believed in himself after sending out the first and decided to repeat on the second. That one also flew into the wall just like the first one. Han Kang-Chi didn't realize whether it was chance or fate. He began to suspect that a hidden talent had awakened in him, after which he decided to flee. The next day, Han Kang-Chi decided to tell his friend everything about how the hidden talent had been discovered in him. But he didn't understand anything, except that his friend didn't understand the value of superior physical attributes. At that time, Han Kang-Chi promised that he would look into what field one could become with such talent. His friend decided to help out a little, and told him that for a high school student in Korea, there are only two areas where pure power can come in handy. Become an athlete and bring glory to the country. But it requires a lot of capital, at least to hire a good coach. Also, the cost of participation is huge. There are few investors in unpopular sports. The second option is a career as a military, police officer, or firefighter 9th grade. Become a guarantor of security and justice, get a government position, and a stable future. But the number of applicants to the military academy every year is about 10,000 people. The competition is 44.4 to 1, and you need to study well there. And there were 160,000 applicants for the 9th grade clerical position this year. But unfortunately, Han Kang-Chi's family has little money in the family, and he is not good at studying. So a friend just advised him to give up. Besides, you have to be competent in some area to be called talented, but he has no such experience, and the latter advised Khan to study more. Only after walking a few meters forward, his friend remembered that there was another option. Even if he was bad at studying and had no money, there was a class that required only pure power. We are then taken to some abandoned hangar where the boss of the MAGA faction, Kwak Du-shik, reigns supreme. A young boy comes up to Kwak Du-shik and bows to him. Kwak Du-shik asked his boys what kind of a boy had come to him. Then, his right hand told him that it was Henim, and he dared to take him to him. And also his right hand said that the kid wants to become #1 in the gangster world. Kwak Du-shik laughed and leaned over to him and told him that they sell, make, and brew drugs in the lab. They also cut off the organs below the waist of their enemies and stuffed them right into the hole. Meanwhile, two men with weapons stood at the entrance to the hangar, who were discussing a plan on how best to catch Kwak Du-shik. After a few minutes they heard screams, and decided to rush in to burn them with evidence. But when they went inside the hangar, they saw a whole crowd of redundant people lying unconscious and without strength. They didn't understand how this was even possible. The next day, Han Kang-Chi walked through the park and thought about his own thoughts, after which Han Kang-Chi sat down on the bench and said in a voice, "I'm back." A split second later, a man came out of the bushes who was very happy to see Han Kang-Chi. It was the beggarly handsome Han Do-jin. When Han Do-jin asked Han Kang-Chi why he was cosplaying dead inside again, and asked him to tell him about his difficult situation, Han Kang-Chi only told him to send him to the academy. Han Do-jin laughed very hard, for he is incapable of not doing this, for he has no connections or money. Han Kang-Chi began to blush and became even more angry. and he also asked him to ask of him only what was in his power. Han Do-jin also questioned why he felt the need to do this in the first place, since he recently said he wanted to be the best at something. Han Kang-Chi explained in an angry voice that he needed qualifications and experience. Talent alone was not enough. After half an hour of talking, Han Do-jin finally agreed that talent is a great thing, the best gift that only comes once in a lifetime. It is only because of this dazzling beauty that he lives as the best beggar among beggars. As soon as Han Do-jin heard the shouts of the two serious men who were looking for someone to take their money back, he immediately jumped into the bushes. They were very angry and ready to use a baseball bat to fix his face. Han Kang-Chi was sick of it all and decided to leave, while wishing his father good luck in hiding. Han Do-jin just held out a leaf from the bushes. Only Han Kang-Chi thought it was trash, but it was a gift from him. His father informed him, if he went to the address that was on the piece of paper, he would definitely be able to find a good way to utilize his talent. And there would also be people there to channel his potential in the right direction. When Han Kang-Chi started to read what was written there, he was very surprised. It said in bold letters that education and work experience were not necessary at all. They were just looking for a strong man. An hour later, it had already arrived at the address given. In that day and time, another kid decided to get a job there. He was surprised to find such a company in such a building, even thought he had come to the wrong place. But since he had no choice, he chose to believe. His name, by the way, was An Dae-young. He was 35 years old, and he was looking for a robot. But An Dae-young couldn't believe to the end that a company with such low requirements could be normal. His mom and dad keep telling him he doesn't have a job, in his 30s. And this is the only place that accepted his documents. But it's not every day he gets called for an interview. So he decided to give it a try. Suddenly, he came back to earth from his thoughts and noticed a girl looking at him. He thought everyone was out and decided to pick his nose. He decided to apologize, but that one quickly left. And An Dae-young thought she was just out of tune. As he was thinking again, he was approached by the receptionist who was just looking for him. Her name was Kim Ta-ni. She was from the first branch of Heroes and was in charge of office work. An Dae-young was embarrassed and even blushed at Kim Ta-ni's beauty, and he also really liked her interesting ears, as if they were elf ears. Kim Ta-ni ran up to him and told him that they hadn't had candidates in 12 years. She herself doesn't know why there are so few takers. An Dae-young immediately realized that no one wanted to go to a place like this at all. That's why there were no customers. And after thinking for a while, he realized that he was automatically accepted. Only Kim Ta-ni upset him, because today there are two people who want to join him at once, and asked him to wait next to him for a while. That's where Han Kang-Chi was sitting. An Dae-young didn't understand why exactly this kid came today and blamed himself for the failure. Han Kang-Chi was also not very happy that this high school student had come there. But there was nothing left to do but introduce, and Han Kang-Chi decided to introduce himself to him and try to become friends. And they also agreed that they would both try to pass this interview. Afterward, Kim Ta-ni walked out of the office and called them both over. Next, they went inside and saw Kim Ta-ni and another man. Kim Ta-ni was going to lead the interview, since apparently there are no people at all in this company. There was also an interviewer sitting next to me. Kim Ta-ni decided to start with An Dae-young and clarified if he really graduated from Hanguk University, and if he only did part-time jobs. When An Dae-young confirmed her words, she started looking at his grades and was surprised that he had a 2-grade point average and that he had a 4th dan in Taekwondo. An Dae-young tensed up a little as the announcement said that they wouldn't be looking at grades. After a couple of minutes of more questions, she decided to move on to Han Kang-Chi. Suddenly, the interviewer said in a low voice that he was bored. Kim Ta-ni was surprised, and the interviewer added that she had boring questions. This interviewer's name was Kim Hwa-ran, and he was the head of the first branch of the heroes of the first of the 8 gates. His nickname was Flame Warrior. He decided to ask the most important question, if they were strong at all. Those began to get a little worried, and even a little afraid because they saw his black eye. Han Kang-Chi decided not to hesitate, and immediately replied that he was strong. An Dae-young, meanwhile, didn't understand what was wrong with him at all, and how he was answering questions so calmly. Kim Hwa-ran looked for a few seconds and said that one was passing. He then got up from the table and announced that the interview was over. Kim Ta-ni didn't understand what was going on, and asked them to wait in the office while she discussed the matter with the master. Kim Ta-na immediately started catching up with Kim Hwa-ran, and asked why he decided to do that, because that's not the way to do it. Kim Hwa-ran wondered why it couldn't be done that way, and justified his decision by saying that the kid replied that he was strong. Kim Ta-ni thought the master was joking, since trainees have to pass 12 tests, including physical and mental aptitude tests. And it is also a headquarters order after all. and soonest such pledges thus admitted will not be approved. Then Kim Hwa-ran thought about it, and realized that she was really right. So he threw Kim Ta-ni a craft yellow card in his hands. And also, Kim Hwa-ran couldn't go and see everything in person because he didn't get enough sleep, because he was preparing for a seminar. And at the end, he ordered those two to yellow. Kim Ta-ni didn't understand what he was talking about. And then Kim Hwa-ran explained that they had already been accepted and were already heroes. All the more so if coping, the staff will definitely convince it. Kim Ta-ni was sick of it, and she even yelled at him to finally stop acting like that. Kim Ta-ni realized that it was very dangerous, and they could die. Kim Hwa-ran turned around and looked at her with a very scary look. Kim Ta-ni was scared and agreed with his decisions. Kim Hwa-ran continued on his way while asking to warn Poon-soon just in case. Meanwhile, An Dae-young and Han Kang-Chi talked to an employee of that company. He said that they are heroes and will fight against the villains, and they were probably accepted and immediately sent on a mission. An Dae-young sighed and realized who they really were. He was sure it was an illegal gang if they only wanted people with good physical features, so An Dae-young decided that he didn't need this job that much and decided to quit. The employee told him to just keep quiet and bring his stamp tomorrow, and then they will sign the contract. The employee told him to just keep quiet and bring his stamp tomorrow, and then they would sign the contract. When this employee asked if they agreed, they immediately agreed after hearing the working conditions. After which they came to the supply room. He wanted to give them clothes for the transformation. When they both put on those suits, they immediately remembered the Pater trainers that were on TV. Next, the staff pulled out a box of 2001 laser guns. It is dangerous to shoot people with these, so he asked not to use it if possible. He also told me there's a Witaru Mart on the first floor, except that you have to buy batteries for them. Then he finished and asked them to go. They went, but they didn't know what to do next. He didn't even tell them the way. After that, they received a message on their phone from the company. It looked like it was from phone scammers, and they didn't like it anymore. In that message, it was written that there was a mission to try not to harm other people and not to break public property. If there is a problem at the mission, you should immediately contact the person in charge of the branch. And there was an address where there was a phone number for address inquiries. These messages only came for An Dae-young since Han Kang-Chi doesn't have cell phone internet, only from Wi-Fi. After that, An Dae-young decided to see where to go, and in the message he saw the address of Narumi's Sodok-gu Lake Park. And that's when he realized it was Chip. An Dae-young actually knew him. He was a cute YouTuber he sometimes watches. He has over 2 million followers. But why it was necessary to get rid of a mere YouTuber they didn't understand. When An Dae-young looked up the route to the park, Sodok-gu Narumi Lake, he was very surprised and dissatisfied that it took 1 hour and 25 minutes to walk there. An Dae-young decided to ask if Han Kang-Chi had any money. But the answer was obvious. He certainly didn't have any money. An Dae-young really didn't want to take the bus, so he called a cab with his own money. During the ride, even the cab driver asked what their costume was, and even suggested they were some kind of entertainers. An Dae-young confirmed his guess and said that he had been doing this for 30 years, and he said it all in a trembling voice. Han Kang-Chi saw how much he was worried and told him not to cry. An Dae-young got angry at him and asked him not to look down on him just because he was doing that at his age. Han Kang-Chi wasn't going to say that, and then An Dae-young apologized. When he asked what a high school student like him was doing here, Han Kang-Chi said that he was just a bad student. He just wants to be the best at something so everyone knows about him, whatever the price. The atmosphere abruptly soured, and he felt very uncomfortable. An Dae-young didn't understand how he wanted to become the best and gain popularity in such a place. To him, it seemed too silly for a high school student. He thought about it all the way through, and came to the realization that he was a normal boy, and this was just a pissed-off kid. Half an hour later, they were already there, and Han Kang-Chi immediately thanked him for paying for the cab. Now all they had to do was find out what kind of robot it was, since they'd have to stick together, and there seemed to be some kind of festival around them. It looked like a lot of fun, but in such a vast area it was very difficult to find Chip, as they suddenly approached the crowd and saw Chip on stage. In honor of the 12th anniversary of the establishment of diplomatic relations, Chip Bear from Narlac himself came here to the lakefront park to have fun at the festival. The whole crowd was very excited to see him with their own eyes. Afterward, Chip went to take pictures and sign autographs. An Dae-young and Han Kang-Chi stood at the end of the line and approached him last. They stood near him and began posing for the camera. Also, Chip himself checked out their costumes and thought they were from the event prep team, so he complimented them for doing such a good job. But An Dae-young started to explain that they are hero trainees and also said, "Excuse me, but will you let yourself be exterminated?" Chip was glad they were finally here. He bent quietly to them and told them that he was a secret messenger for the heroes and needed to give him the items he needed. For this, he asked Mr. Producer if he was free. He of course let him go and praised him for such a good job. He further asked to follow him. Only now did it realize to An Dae-young that extermination was some sort of password. Chip revealed that these are must-have items for the heroes of the interns, and he hid them so no one could steal them. They went into some alley and Chip pointed his finger to the end of the street, specifically a dumpster. All this he did to hide it well so no one would guess. An Dae-young started looking at the trash can with anticipation, but he only saw ordinary trash there. As suddenly in a split second, Chip slit An Dae-young's throat, after which Chip grabbed Han Kang-Chi by the throat. Chip was amused to watch it all. After all, what else could be in the trash can but garbage? Chip turned into a monster. His teeth became big and sharp, and his gaze was like some kind of mutant villain. It was very hard for Chip as he was hungry. It was very difficult for him to hold back in front of such a crowd of people. Not heroes. It's a different matter for him. Han Kang-Chi decided to get his gun to survive. But Chip noticed this and quickly grabbed his gun and threw it away. At the same time, he threatened him not to move or he'd be sorry to eat two of them at once. He also decided to eat a little and bit his hand off. He started screaming very hard. Chip saw that he was already slowly passing out, but that was just the beginning. Just as suddenly, in a single moment, Han Kang-Chi punched him directly into his body with great force. Chip was misunderstood and furious at what the little guy was allowing himself. So he decided to get back at him and hit him with all his might right into the wall too. He was going to have a lot of fun with him for a long time, but now he just decided to swallow him whole. Then he headed over to eat him whole. Just as suddenly, a man appeared in front of Han Kang-Chi who stopped him. Chip couldn't move after the man touched him. After the man deactivated his abilities, Chip jumped away from him to a safe distance. It was the captain of the hero's first squad, the second of the 8 gates. His nickname was Wind Elf, and his name was Young Poon. Chip understood that this was a hero. However, he was very different from those kids. He also remembered that Narlac has a peace treaty with humanity. Young Pun was furious that he had such a say after what he had done to those 2 kids. Young Pun didn't care either way, as he would kill him anyway. Next, he simply raised his hand and flashed his tattoo. Chip, when he saw the tattoo on this guy's left arm, he got really scared and decided to back away. He was even beginning to think it was definitely a trigram. He ran from there with all his might, for he realized that if he didn't, he would be a corpse. Just as suddenly, Young Pun appeared in front of his face, after which, Young Pun punched him in the body. Thus, he quickly fell down and broke through a couple of walls. Chip began to ask him to wait and give him a minute. He further explained that they had attacked him and he was just scared. He was even willing to surrender to Mr. Hero and be justly re-educated. Young Pun didn't have any patience and used the wind flow technique, the second stage. Immediately, he used another technique called Wind God Power. Chip couldn't last long under his techniques and began to transform into his true form. It was the final phase, namely, the yellow stage monster Chip. He also praised Young Pun for being able to force him to transform. Chip also recognized that the latter was strong, but still gave him the option to surrender since he couldn't beat him in that form. Chip was very huge and his muscles had grown several times their size. But there was one problem. His side was on fire. Then Chip remembered that it was probably because of the blow from that boy with the cactus instead of a hairdo. So he did nothing ingenious but just take that piece and rip it off. There was a small problem, but now it can be ignored. After that, Chip headed in the direction of Young Poon to kill him. But it was quickly torn apart piece by piece as Young Pun used the wind flow, stage 6. Chip was torn absolutely to little pieces, and then he used the technique of stating the law of the wind, and Chip disappeared altogether. Afterward, Young Poon went back to the trainees and asked his assistant what the condition was. The vitals were unstable, but the worst is over, and the right hand is undergoing cell regeneration. With that much blood loss, he could very well be dead. But he was holding up pretty well. Yon Pung was standing nearby when Chip attacked Han Kang-Chi. Then he remembered that he was a perfectly normal guy until he bit his hand off. Young Pun also asked the assistant if there was no more crafts nearby, but other than Chip, no one else was registered. After a few seconds, she did find one, a little far from here, but still. The color of this half-monster was craft green. It changed its condition 5 hours ago, but he's still in Section 2's jurisdiction. Oh, and it's green. So she didn't even see the point of doing such a master. To the assistant's surprise, Young Pun asked not to be given to the second unit. He decided to move out right there, and he also decided to take Han Kang-Chi with him. Before he left, he asked how long it would take for the arm to fully regenerate. The assistant estimated it to be about 20 minutes. He wanted to see if there was anything interesting about their newcomer or not. After a while, Han Kang-Chi began to come to his senses. He woke up right in front of the half-monster. That half-monster had no idea that if it got to this stage, he actually just wanted to kill the fucking company employees who were bullying him, so that's what happened. And since being stronger than others is so exhilarating, so he killed a bit more. He also wanted to test his new powers, which was why he was hoping for a hero to appear. He didn't know if he thought he was strong or underestimating him, but it pissed him off. When Han Kang-Chi came to his senses, he didn't understand what had happened. He remembered that he had been attacked by a scary-looking chip and had eaten his hand. While Han Kang-Chi was looking at his hand, that half-monster just flew onto his back. Han Kang-Chi saw a large behemoth flying at him, so he quickly realized and dodged the impact. The half-monster grabbed his head, and yet he didn't understand why this hero was so weak. Out of fright, Han Kang-Chi struck straight at his body with his fist. This infuriated the half-monster, and he slammed him to the ground, then added a couple more times with his fists against his body. The half-monster realized that it wasn't the little guy who was too damn weak. It was just that he was too strong. While he was considering his hands, young Pun appeared beside him. The half-monster was shocked that some man had appeared near him. That being said, young Pun was a bit upset since what he thought about was just a simple coincidence. But a few seconds later, Han Kang-Chi got up from the ground. His eyes were burning, and they were also filled with vengeance and power. The half-monster was very surprised that he was able to survive his blow. So this time he's definitely going to kill him. When the half-monster hit him with all his might right in the head, nothing happened. He stupidly endured everything and didn't even slouch. After which, Han Kang-Chi also punched at him with all his might. Han Kang-Chi made a hole in the half-monster's body, and it flew away with great speed. In the meantime, young Poon stood there and watched the whole thing. And he was shocked because he couldn't believe his eyes. There hasn't been a guy like him with that kind of power in a long time. Meanwhile, there was a big and loud party at the Utopia Club, but really it was all a cover for more serious people. In Utopia, everyone is a partner who shares the same dream, and everyone is confident in each other. However, this incident of Chip going missing has raised some doubts among the superiors. Afterward, the conversation turned to food. The servant asked the boss if she had ever cooked cut meat at once. If you start cooking it, being seduced by its bright red color, and want to try it as soon as possible. But you will also be sorely disappointed. The shortened muscles and lactic acid make it impossible to cook it properly, even by the best cooks. The question arises, so how do you enjoy delicious meat? And the answer is quite simple. You just have to wait. Wait for the enzymes and microorganisms to break down and destroy the hardness of the meat. Give it time. Then, and only then, could the best flavor be enjoyed. So the boss gave the order to just wait for the right moment. Meanwhile, Han Kang-Chi woke up as if in a hospital. But as he stood up and looked around a bit, he realized it was the same company. Walking forward a bit, he could still see young Pun and An Dae-young standing beside him. An Dae-young wanted to leave the company altogether. There is no way he would have taken this job knowing what it would be like. He feels like he can't take it next time. It's too terrifying. Young Pun stood there the entire time and remained silent while looking at him with a very scary look. After which, young Pun simply told the man to get lost. Young Pun even began to think that they should have let him die. Dead, he would be more useful. As young Pun started to walk away, Kim Tani caught up with him. He thanked him for his hard work and wished him a good journey on the way back. He only asked him to get off his back. Also, young Pun ordered that yellow-haired coward to be brainwashed and sent home, since they don't need clowns like that. In doing so, he blamed Kim Tani for doing this interview. Even though it doesn't matter who they choose, they shouldn't waste their time on such a coward. Kim Tani didn't know what to say and just apologized. Also, before young Poon left, he asked what that island-haired kid was like. Kim Tani revealed that she thought his injuries were much more serious. But as soon as she entered his room, he said he would continue working here. He didn't want to give up and quit the job. Young Pun was happy about this news, he had guessed so. Suddenly, the very employee who was issuing the uniform broke into their conversation and started yelling that they had a very big problem and asked to watch the news urgently. Reporters found remnants of scattered padding and pink fur of missing YouTuber Chip. Chip, that was loved for his cuteness and kindness, became the victim of a horrible murder. And the same police said they will conduct a thorough investigation to find out if someone had a motive to harm Chip, a resident of Naraka. The presenter reminded us that next year will be the 13th anniversary of the peace era. Those who cannot adapt are villains. Those who rationalize their methods through barbaric violence are villains. Those who want to destroy the world are also villains. This infuriated young Pun so much that he couldn't stand it and punched his fist right at the TV. Young Poon didn't understand why he was seeing their strife on the news. He started yelling at them that they hadn't done their job properly and now he had to worry about it again. Kim Ta-ni started apologizing and crying. The same interviewer who had just interviewed the two boys came into the conversation. He also advised Young Poon to take a neuropathy test, and he also added that it is all the responsibility of the leader, and asked if he was not mistaken in calling him Pung Soon. Young Poon reminded him that they had already talked about this topic, and asked him not to call him that again, and if he has to remind him again, he'll take his life in the process. The interviewer even laughed that Pung Soon was so formidable with him, and agreed to fight if he could kill him at all, of course. They were ready to start competing right there. But the boss walked in and yelled at them to stop. He started reprimanding them for engaging in utter nonsense. This was the hero director of the 6th of the 8 trigrams. His nickname was the Guardian of Heaven. His name was Cheon-yul. He too just watched the news and realizes the gravity of the situation. The leader of the monsters has clearly already reached the final stage of evolution. But what was found was a rejected piece of it. It can't be. Tani is the most skillful professional he's ever met. He trusts her experience and knows she will not make a mistake. With the noise of the news, we'll take over their headquarters. There is nothing to indicate that they had anything to do with the incident. The government, too, will sooner or later quiet down after making its statements. As unpleasant as it may be, they must realize the importance of maintaining the balance of this era of peace. And since he is the director, he will take responsibility for the fate of the characters. Young Pun asked to stop all this and be even, because that wasn't his real reason for coming here. Cheon-yul laughed and praised Pung Soon for his wit. Cheon-yul heard some interesting news from Hwarang this morning. Namely that there is one promising intern in the first branch of the hero program. The interviewer confirmed his words and added that he and Kim Ta-ni were the ones who carefully selected it themselves. In general, the newcomer that went against the yellow one and held his ground interested him a great deal. That's why he ran straight here. Also, Cheon-yul heard that they accepted him without even conducting a verification exam. Kim Ta-ni confirmed his words in a quiet and unsure voice. He wasn't satisfied that they just ignored the clear guidance from headquarters. Kim Ta-ni apologized to him again, and the interviewer decided to change the subject and promised to send it right away as soon as possible. Cheon-yul decided to ask if Pung Soon had anything against it, but he didn't care since he was only a part-time employee here. Therefore, Cheon-yul instructed him to escort him out. Young Pun was indignant and didn't understand why he had to do that. Cheon-yul starts off deciding to clarify that he doesn't have a job this afternoon. Young Pun confirmed his words that he is free, but he still wasn't satisfied and asked that it be assigned to someone else. Cheon-yul decided to remind him that the branch master's tradition of helping the trainee is unique to heroes. It's the branch master's way of showing that he personally chose and vetted the trainee. The 2nd, 3rd, 4th branch maintains this tradition, and it is his responsibility as the 1st branch master to do the same. Young Poon also decided to remind him that he wasn't the one who chose him, but it was a joint decision between him and his team. Cheon-yul revealed that Hwarang's patience depend on him. It would be irresponsible of them to take him away from them for a long time. The interviewer also added that it's not only unfair to them, but to their heroes too. Young Pun was unrealistically angry and didn't know what to even say to them. He ended up riding in the car with Han Kang-Chi the next day. Young Poon kept saying that he would kill them as soon as he had the chance. While they were stuck in traffic, Young Poon asked him why he didn't have a license, and without waiting for an answer, he called him a sociopath who was good for nothing, just taking up space and transferring oxygen. When he finished, Han Kang-Chi explained that he was just a middle school student. Young Poon told him to just shut up. After a couple minutes, Han Kang-Chi asked him if this was really a verification training. To Young Poon, it was just a small thing. Just a test to see if he could become a hero in a couple days. It's a verbal test, even garbage like that can pass easily. After that, his job will be more interesting if he finishes and comes back. He'll make sure he's sweet. On the way, Han Kang-Chip asked how long it would take. In response, he heard a figure of 3 days, so he asked to stop by the park. Young Pun didn't understand what for, but still did him favors. There, of course, he met his father, and told him absolutely all the news. His father was happy that he had seriously gotten a job in this competitive labor market. He was really proud. But the only thing was his father felt bad that he wouldn't be able to see him for 3 whole days. It would be hard for him, but he would still try to get over it. And when my father saw the inspector, he even hid because he looked pretty familiar, after which they said their goodbyes. When he got into the car, Han Kang-Chi asked for just one more place to stop by. Young Pun was as unsatisfied as possible, but still agreed. He came to see An Dae-young. Han Kang-Chi bowed in front of him and placed the envelope in front of him on the floor. At that, An Dae-young didn't remember who it was at all. There was money on the floor and a small note. "Thank you for paying for the cab." Afterward, Han Kang-Chi got into the car and said that he was now fully prepared. And as they were pulling away, Yeon-pung was taking An Dae-young away in the mirror. After a while, they were standing in traffic again, and Han Kang-Chi thanked Young-pun for defending him earlier in front of Chip. Young-pun looked at him and just told him to shut up. After a few hours, they did make it to the site. When they went up to the restricted floor, they were met there by the director of the hero healers, Lee Seok. It had been 12 years since Young-pun had last been here. But Young-pun didn't even regret being away for so long, and he didn't even want to visit this dump. Lee Seok wouldn't even think that someone from the first branch could say such words. But unlike Lee Seok, Young-pun doesn't live like a caged animal. That's when Lee Seok realized that his personality remains as unpleasant as before. After which, Lee Seok turned his attention to the very new intern he had heard about. This was the first intern in his memory to be brought in by the first branch. It was surprising that such an ordinary high school student like him had joined them. He already knew his name was Han Kang-Chi, and he also asked why he wanted to join the heroes so badly. Han Kang-Chi answered simply, his goal is to reach the top. Young-pun was surprised at his words, and Lee Seok basically assumed so. Next, Lee Seok ordered a servant to escort him to the examination room. Young-pun realized that he had nothing more to do here and he decided to leave, but he was stopped by Lee Seok. Lee Seok had a special treat for him. It's 93-year-old Ningkon's black tea from England. It's a rare blend that he won't find in Korea, so he invited him to have a cup with him. Young-pun didn't want to drink this herb, so he refused. Lee Seok knew that's what he would say. That's why he came with this. Young-pun turned around and asked if he had brought a straw too. The one only replied the color yellow. It was his favorite color. After a couple of minutes, he sat satisfied and drank his favorite drink. Lee Seok was pleased that his taste for the top drink had not changed. Young-pun was pleased, for it was 10,000 times tastier than the herb he was offering. This was their first meeting after the era of peace, Sun by Neem. So Lee Seok asked how things were going with Hwa Ran. Young-pun threatened Lee Seok that he would kill him if he said his name one more time. Lee Seong frowned, as the ending hadn't changed a bit. As it was, Young-pun decided to be a good guy, so he asked what was concerning him and what he was even doing here, on this useless playground created by the cunning of the director and the Association of Humanity. Young-pun didn't understand why he had been rotting here for over a decade. The man who was once known as Conductor Unsai Shinsu. Lee Seong didn't understand what he meant by useless. He also asked him to watch his words. The rules and regulations here are very strict. But on the other hand, Lee Seong hasn't changed a bit. Still, it was a bit of a surprise to Young-pun. Although it was a surprise to Lee Seong that a trainee from the first branch came here. But what really amazes him is that he personally brought him here. Young-pun started yelling at him and that he didn't want to come here in the first place. He was just duped by this old man and dragged into the case. He was going to kill that old geezer when he had the chance. But Lee Seong was not so easily led, and he realized that he was interested in the intern. Young-pun was really intrigued by this kid. And even more so, he seemed very suspicious of him. Young-pun didn't want to continue, so he threw a cup at him and decided to leave, dismissing that he was very noisy. In the aftermath, Lee Seong wished him not to die, and he just gave me the finger. Young-pun was very excited when he finally came out of there. It was also time for him to go home and finish watching the missed show. While he was on his way out, he met Han Kang-Chi. He wondered what he was doing here and asked him that. Han Kang-Chi replied that he was told to go home as he was disqualified. Young-pun didn't understand how this happened since he just had to pass the basic test. It was just bullying him. After which, the servant came over and added that that was the problem. Namely, he didn't have a base. As soon as Yeon-pung and Han Kang-Chi arrived at the headquarters, Yeon-pung told everyone the situation, and Kim Ta-ni and Cheon-yul were in a huge shock. Cheon-yul didn't understand how there was no base. Young-pun decided to demonstrate everything and told Han Kang-Chi what 6 times 3 would be. He hesitated and asked to use a notebook. This really pissed Young-pun off, so he shouted back at him 16 and called him a jerk. Cheon-yul was surprised that he didn't have a basic understanding of school knowledge. Young-pun didn't stand for it and used the storm of the blade. A second evolution, a tunneling strike of the storm. After that, Han Kang-Chi flew out of the building, making a hole in the wall. In the evening, Cheon-yul and Kim Ta-ni decided to go out for coffee. Fortunately, by evening, Young-pun cooled down and went home. Cheon-yul realized that they were reckless here, and it must be hard for her. Kim Ta-ni laughed, though she realized that they weren't just being reckless, but much worse. They also touched on the topic with the new intern, as he is quite intriguing. Kim Ta-ni was also very surprised. But that's not the only thing that's surprising. Recently, Cheon-yul went to his room. He said something quite intriguing. Now Cheon-yul knows why Hwa-ran chose him. Kim Ta-ni understood what he was getting at, and understood him completely. However, he was curious about something. Chip's monster class is yellow, so it's impossible for someone who isn't a master to be approved. But how the trainee could do that is beyond comprehension. Kim Ta-ni revealed that it was his fault. She misjudged him because he seemed nice, and she thought an intern would be enough. She apologized for letting him down. He decided not to answer anything, just kept drinking his coffee. Except it was strange to Kim Ta-ni that their approach was either that or a direct attack on them. But this time it's different. She's confident that their approach has changed. Cheon-yul didn't see it that way. For something like this to change or vary, there must be a reason for the change. For some reason, it felt like a chilling breeze was blowing. Meanwhile, the regular dorm students were discussing the news about Chip's murder. Chip's fur was all torn up in the pics, and they were certainly uncomfortable. Even now, there are still people who will stop at nothing, including rioting, to get what they want from those they consider villains. His friend told him to distract him since it wasn't concerning, and advised him to do his homework better. Toth decided to offer to eat Chimek to recharge, but the friend was reluctant. So he opened the door ajar and shouted, "Hey, pig with muscles, go order some chicken!" That said, for some reason this muscle pig has been wandering around alone for so long for hours now. Meanwhile, the big guy sat in front of the TV and was sad, since I couldn't believe Chip had been destroyed, and also the big guy wondered if he'd have to do it now. At this time, An Dae-young was lying on his bed watching a comedy show. Suddenly his phone rang, or rather his mom called him. An Dae-young decided not to pick up the phone and continued to watch the TV show further. A couple minutes later, his sister An Ji-yu came into the room and started yelling at him for daring to ignore his mom's call. An Dae-young decided to flip out at the fool and said he just didn't notice. My sister started yelling that if he was unemployed, he should at least have the conscience to answer the phone. She was tired of putting up with all these people complaining about him all the time. She also warned him if he ignored one more call, he would be a corpse. When he left the room, he began to complain that she had a job and that supposedly excused her. Such behavior with her own brother. An Dae-young wanted to relax after such a situation and decided to have a snack. Meanwhile, the sister didn't realize when she would, after all, start acting like a human being. Suddenly, she saw an unpacked box in her room. She came out of her room and hit An Dae-young, and the chips flew all over the room. An Ji-yu guessed that he was the one who opened the box and started yelling at him for daring to sneak into her room without her consent. An Dae-young explained to her that she had told him to clean up earlier, so he came in. An Ji-yu started yelling at him even more. She didn't understand why he needed to fumble with her stuff then, and showed him the piece of paper he'd recently used to interview for the hero position. An Dae-young couldn't remember even that when he read that they were looking for trainee heroes. He only remembered a little bit, namely that he was curious and took this piece of paper. An Dae-young also assumed it was the company she works for and handed out flyers. An Ji-yu didn't understand what he meant. She soon guessed that it was another company using their name. So to clarify, they sent this sample. For she did not understand what kind of company it could be that disregarded academic knowledge, age, and experience. This seemed very strange to An Dae-young, but still didn't understand why her company had distributed so many samples. An Ji-yu couldn't stand his stupid questions anymore, so she just wanted to go somewhere and complain to someone. And as she was walking out, he told her not to even tell her he was going to go to interviews with this one. But An Dae-young convinces her that he's not stupid, and who in their right mind would even attend these suspicious events. Only An Ji-yu realized that her brother was the one who could do it. However, she decided to forget it and ordered him to clean up the house before she returned. And before leaving, An Dae-young asked her for $10 for a snack. An Ji-yu decided not to even answer and just closed the doors loudly. Suddenly after a minute, he got a message from his sister. Namely, she threw him $10. At that, he became very kind and cheerful. After that, he took this paper and wondered whether it was worth going there for an interview at all, as the conditions were very tempting. On the way to work, An Ji-yu complained about why they even sent her this box home. She couldn't believe that they expected her to distribute it. She doesn't want to be associated with branches that don't have interns. All this she said because she was the hero of the 4th branch. An Ji-yu also decided to go to the first thread to express her grievances. Eventually, she couldn't get through and threw her phone on the ground. She didn't want to put up with it and decided to go there in person. Meanwhile, An Dae-young decided to go to the computer club. After which, I decided to go out to eat, and while he was eating, he got a message from an unfamiliar number. "I apologize, but you have been denied an interview. Thank you for your interest, and I wish you a good day." He was not so much upset, but instead decided to go home and make himself happy by watching his favorite show. While walking home, he accidentally bumped into a passerby and fell, after which he stood up and said not to worry about him. It was the big guy from the dorm, after which they parted ways. When he got home, he went straight to watch TV until the evening. As darkness fell around him, he noticed that his sister had not yet arrived, though she had promised to return early. Suddenly there was a knock at the door. He thought she was drunk again. But when he opened the door, he met no one. He already thought it was just a prank, but he didn't know who would do something like that. Suddenly the house lights went out. He was even more worried that his sister hadn't returned yet, so he decided to call her. As he typed, a big guy appeared behind him. An Dae-young remembered that he was the one he tripped over today, and as odd as it was, the big guy rocked it exactly from the photo that was taken with Chip. But first, the big guy decided to play a little game with him. When An Ji-yu approached the company, she regained her composure even though she was very angry. She didn't understand why the window was broken, even though she knew that they probably wouldn't hurt the trainees from the other branches. Then she remembered that Wind and Flame were some of the masters of the first branch, and they were known to be the cruelest. She decided to call the company again, and no one answered. But anyway, the reality of life is loneliness, so she made the decision to return home. If you look at the bigger picture, it's for the sake of the characters, and it's their destiny and love. On her way back, she saw a guy coming straight out of the company. She didn't understand why the lights were on everywhere but the first branch. At the time, she had no idea who it might be. On the way home, Han Kang-Chi was looking at the book he had been given to master multiplication. The only thought in his mind was that it was quite difficult to become a hero. However, it seemed to him that he was already one step away from that. He also recalled a very scary moment in his life, namely his mother. They were then attacked, and to protect her child, she locked him in a closet. However, he is now obliged to do so for his mother's sake. On the way home, Han Kang-Chi met An Dae-young. Han Kang-Chi was already glad that his memories had finally come back to him. But in reality, of course, he didn't remember anything, he was just pretending. And there was some kind of cord coming out of his leg, and he was heading straight for the big guy's mask. An Dae-young and the big guy met at the steakhouse and gave him a choice of who to kill. His family or the guy he didn't know. Han Kang-Chi. And of course he chose Han Kang-Chi for his family. He was sorry, but family was many times more important to him. So he swung low. Suddenly a girl appeared and hit the big guy and he flew away. As you can easily guess, it was An Ji-yu. After that, she started throwing more punches at the big guy, and even to the point of blood. The big guy realized that it was just An Dae-young's sister. But unlike his brother, she was quite brave. When she jumped on him again, he started yelling for her to listen to him. She didn't even want to listen to him, as she realized he was just a psychotic pig who used an unemployed lazy guy to mess around, and everything else he says is complete bullshit. Then she punched him right in the face with all her might. The big guy felt like he was fighting a rabid dog, not a hero. But on the other hand, it was great, for that was exactly what he wanted. An Ji-yu only asked that he shut his grunt, because his chatter was annoying as hell, so she ran at him to tear that filthy mouth open. But as soon as she approached him, she felt a strange premonition. So she jumped over him and decided to attack him from the back. Suddenly, a huge mouth with big teeth appeared on the big guy's back. She didn't quite manage to dodge and hurt her arm to the point of bleeding, after which his whole body was covered with mouths. And then he asked what had happened to it, for it used to look like a valiant, fierce dog. It was the final stage of the beast, a yellow one to be exact, and they nicknamed it Big Judy. An Dae-young couldn't believe what the hell was happening to him and his sister right now. And this monster, he's turned into an even scarier monster. He looks a lot stronger than he used to. But also, An Dae-young couldn't just stand there and watch like that because he realized that his sister would die that way. So he wanted to do something useful. Enhancing consciousness is maximizing the physical level. But An Ji-yu didn't understand why he was wandering around if he was yellow. She didn't know what to do, for she had no idea how he would fight the yellow one by himself, without his masters. But on the other hand, it's pretty damn exhilarating. Finding the yellows is difficult because of HQ rules, but she won't be able to pass up the chance. She started running near him with great speed. Even if he manages to overtake him with his sudden change of speed, he will never be able to catch him. And at one point, she decided to bite him. But he didn't even have to overtake, he just opened his mouth on the back. This time, the big man managed to clamp her hand in his jaws. The big guy decides to introduce her to his Judy as she protects him, leaving him to indulge in his favorite pastime. After which, the big man punched An Ji-yu with all his might right into his body. She hit the wall and her arms were all bloody and damaged. The big guy decided to take advantage of that and jumped on her. He fixed her arm with his mouth, and with his hand he decided to nail her. But somehow, miraculously, she managed to get out of there. Now she drew conclusions, and realized that those mouths on him were moving of their own accord. They were protecting him and attacking her at the same time. Any swift attack he made had no effect on him. It's what they call an absolute defense. But now she decided to go all out, and use secret techniques she really didn't want to show. Meanwhile, An Dae-young stabbed Han Kang-Chi after all. So he did what the big guy told him to do. So he ran up to his sister and grabbed her hand and started running away from there. On the way, An Ji-yu started yelling at him to let him go. An Dae-young explained to her that he had made a deal with the monster that if he gave him the school children, he would let him go. After saying those words, An Ji-yu stopped and punched him. An Ji-yu didn't understand how her brother could be so naive. But what pissed her off even more was that he'd gotten to the point of dumping a man for some sacrifice. It didn't matter to her if he was unemployed or lazy, but to her, that didn't mean one had to wonder. You just have to be a real person. While she was explaining all this to her brother, the big guy came up to her. From the surprise, she didn't have time to dodge, and the big guy managed to get right in her face. The big guy was having fun because things were just picking up. But unfortunately, An Dae-young ruined everything. Meanwhile, An Dae-young couldn't believe that he had set him up and lied to him, for they had made a deal. At these words, the big guy only laughed hard. An Dae-young realized that no one was going to save him, so he started to run away while begging to be spared. The big guy didn't even bother to catch up to him, but just threw a trash can at him. An Dae-young had ruined his mood, and now he wanted to punish him. The big guy had studied the information about An Dae-young, and knew that he was an unemployed man in his early 30s who blamed society for his failures, and had no prospects for the future. In other words, a total loser. And over a lifetime, he'd picked up that a character like his, no matter the situation, they'd trust too easily. He decided to play with it first and hit it just once, which made it fly into the wall, and he started bleeding from the shelf pile of injuries. The big man already wanted to kill him, then abruptly woke up Han Kang-Chi. That one immediately hit him and his side, and it began to glow. The big guy was furious that scum like him should know his place, so he decided to pity him for his choice. Han Kang-Chi decided to jump on him again and made a hole in him, but he failed and the big guy hit him first. Han Kang-Chi didn't give up and decided to give him another blow, and this time he did manage to touch him after all. The big guy couldn't believe that Judy was scared and didn't react in any way. But looking at him, he realized that this guy with the pointy hair would one day be a huge source of worry for Nararaki. But before it was too late, he decided to tear it apart. So he punched him in the face. Han Kang-Chi decided to take advantage of this, and decided to bite his hand with his teeth. The big guy was so sick of it, he decided to end it all. After waiting for a moment, he still managed to hit Han Kang-Chi with the yoke in the face. Then he jumped up and punched Han Kang-Chi once more, and on the ground, started stomping and beating him. After that, the big guy laughed as he memorized it well. This is the power of Big Judy from the Daruka tribe, Nararaki's elite troops. But at one point it started to kind of deflate, and at the same moment, An Ji-yu flew into his head with her foot. She specifically scared him, so the big guy hit her and she flew at full speed into the wall. It was really unbelievable to him that he still had her strength. Just as suddenly, An Dae-young appeared with a shard of glass and shouted, "Stop!" to him. He couldn't take it anymore. Even now, he couldn't contain all those feelings within him. And without even letting him speak, the big man chopped off his hands. He was literally left with no hands. The big guy didn't understand why he thought he could beat him if he had the courage. It is all useless, for he is a loser who has spent his life denying reality. And just now his posture is perfect. It's the only option that works for him. So the big guy decided to kill him along with his sister, even though she had already spent most of her strength. An Dae-young saw his sister flying at the big guy, and to help he jumped into the mouth that was in his stomach. An Dae-young knew he was a useless 30-year-old loser. But at least for the last time, he doesn't want to die a loser. An Dae-young shouted to his sister to grab the big man's left arm. After which, Han Kang-Chi, who was already running towards him, appeared. He hit him with all his strength, and this time the attack was very successful and finally defeated the big guy. After a while, the assistant and young Poon arrived. The assistant immediately injected him with 500 milligrams of adrenaline, but An Dae-young's life force is still running low. Because the assistant had revitalized his cells 2 days ago, their regeneration rate had slowed down considerably. For some reason, there's a deep stab wound on his left palm. Most of the cells have already died in that wound. What's more, she was trying to recover both of his hands at the same time, which is no easy task. Young Pun had already learned how they had defeated the big guy, and this among all the strategies he had seen was the most horrifying. Still, he wanted the newcomer to survive. When An Dae-yo woke up, he saw Yeonpung's big smile. It made him uneasy, but worst of all, he felt terrible. Meanwhile, the big guy himself woke up. He didn't understand how he could have made a mistake with that little bastard. He decided to run while he was unconscious. Because if he didn't, he'd die. But before he could step back, he met Young Poon. After that, Young Poon started to tell me that if the heroes were fighting for their lives, they should have died. And that big guy wasn't even a bull. The big guy foresaw that he might be in trouble, so he had a trump card up his sleeve. He planted the bomb in this brick building. He also met a mother and her son there, and told me that they were crying because they were so happy to be alive. But he does not yet know what awaits them. After which, in a rough voice, the big man advised Young Poon to hurry up and save them, unless he wanted innocent people to die. Young Poon didn't even move, so 5 seconds later, the big guy pressed the button from the bomb. Young Poon didn't care at all. The big guy didn't understand what kind of psychopath was standing in front of him. For heroes should help others. Young Poon didn't listen to him any further and started chopping him apart with his fan. He didn't want to leave trash like him who was able to plant a bomb in an apartment building. So Young Poon just took it and split it into small pieces. In fact, Young Poon knew that the people living in those buildings had evacuated even before the explosion. Fortunately, the injured have been stabilized. They are left to wait and see. After which, some girl came up to them and said that the trainee in the 4th Division had been taken by the divisional engineer. This is the first time the yellow rank has been found this late. If they had delayed any longer, the damage would have been far greater. The only question that remained was why the rank card hadn't activated, except that it didn't seem like it was inactive to Young Poon. He could pretend it wasn't working. Meanwhile, Hwaran came over and asked what it meant. The receptionist immediately asked why, in fact, he had come here in the first place. At that time, Hwaran revealed that the appearance of a high-ranking mystery man whose card was not activated really interested him. But what Young Poon said, Hwaran was a little offended by it, and already thought he was suspicious. But surprisingly, Young Poon said he quite believes him, and it's all because they're a team. Hwaran was quiet for a while, and said that this time he took a risk. The next day, Young Poon went to Cheon-Yul's house to tell her about the secret investigation. Young Poon revealed that he had a yellow there yesterday, and he even has a photo of it. Except Cheon-Yul couldn't understand. If someone gave him that photo, he can't understand why he acted that way. 12 years of formal diplomatic relations with humanity. For someone who was depressed in peacetime, it was like a revelation. The skill system is a peacekeeping system that can detect uncontrollable monsters in advance. But this time, it couldn't detect the appearance of the monster, and it's a serious problem. And then the thought arises, what if this is the beginning and not the exception? And that thing, it's just higher level than yellow. That's exactly why Young Poon wanted to know more about this hairy coward. These guys aren't going to make any rash moves. Their media is playing the chief. Yellow was eliminated by the map. That's definitely the first time since the beginning of the peace era. Cheon-Yul only had one question. Why did they want to investigate without anyone finding out? Young Poon didn't bother to explain, but simply asked to turn the photo upside down. On the back was the word utopia. Cheon-Yul still didn't understand the word utopia. Young Poon explained that it was an old bridge, and he should know it too. 3 years ago, Utopia was a small company that is now number 2 on the market, since the Association of Humanity invested in them. It's all a little suspicious, but Young Poon senses that this is a very bad sign. Cheon-Yul promised him to keep it a secret, and will do his best to help him. While they were talking, Han Kang-Chi and Kim Ta-ni came over. His recovery speed is faster than the average non-static person. And then Young Poon reminded him about the camp. Cheon-Yul understood that this time their 1st Division would also participate. But poisoning a trainee that had only been working for them for 3 days to a hero camp that would open in a month was too reckless. Young Poon understood this, so he made the decisions to train Han Kang-Chi. If he fails to handle the bases, he should be just a workaround to prove he's a hero. It's true Han Kang-Chi was thinking of a regular summer camp. The rank card, or rather the color of the cards that define the tasks, is assigned based on the grade. Master is a yellow, orange, red card. Official employee is blue, blue, green. Trainee is purple. Masters are the members of the Octagon, the strongest heroes. Between them and the other ranks, there is a large, unbridgeable gulf. The others are a different story. Next is a little story from a month ago, Blizz de Gwalyong. In the car was the 2nd Division of Heroes, trainee Seok Jin, who was complaining that where they were driving only had 1 antenna, and he needed to max level before he went to the Green Dragon King on difficulty mode. But he was even more dissatisfied with the old village they were passing through. After a while, Seok Jin decided to hit Lee Soo-jung, who had fallen asleep. Seok Jin started yelling at him to control himself and not shove it. Each year, each division of heroes selects 2 interns. Meanwhile, strange things were happening in the 3rd Division of Heroes. Some man in a hooded cloak said that the silent being hiding under their feet that watches over all living things is the Earth. And it's a cult, noble brethren who continue to take pride in their land. Whereupon this chief shouted, "Never lose your proud, my brothers!" The man with the blue mask was named Muyung Ho-sang, and he was from the 3rd Division of Heroes trainee. And the one with the red mask was named Muyung So-san, and she was also from the 3rd Division of Heroes. These trainees are going to the evaluation camps. They will take tests to become employees. Meanwhile, we see a helicopter trying to land. They were 2 Division 4 heroes, trainees. One was An-ji and the other was Han Kyung-hee. They were looking for the master, locked up for the first time. Since they're here, they assume he's already following them. There were also some strange things going on in the abandoned building. There were 2 people there, and the servant told me that, as last year, 2 trainees each from the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th divisions were in the 5th camp. It turned out to be a hero level-up camp, and the leader of the task force was named Yo-Anna. She kept wondering who was going to be an employee this time. At the same time, if there is a shortage of participants, HQ will cover the shortage. That's why this time, the HQ is using the T-17 model. Yo-Anna looked at all the contestants, but still didn't see where the contestants from the 1st division were. The servant told them that they had not arrived yet, even though they had even told them the exact time. But it's been 20 minutes and still no sign of them. The servant had even spent the last 10 minutes trying to contact them via cell phone. Yo-Anna didn't understand why those jerks from the 1st division had joined them in the first place, and why they couldn't pull themselves together. She didn't know what to do, and the servant suggested a little rescheduling for them. But Yo-Anna didn't like the idea, as she wouldn't forgive disregarding the rules. If they don't show up for a test starting at 12 and are automatically excluded. Meanwhile, 3 teams had already gathered in the room just waiting. Lee Soo-jun decided to give Seok-jin a massage, and by doing so, he earned 100 points from him. Seok-jin also began to discuss the 4th division, namely the 2 girls. In his opinion, wearing a military vest does not make you stronger. The 3rd division? That's something else. It's like they came from some part-time job in the middle of nowhere. And when he saw the robot, he laughed. For Seok-jin, it was children's street games, not hero camp. This infuriated An-ji, who heard the discussions, and asked that yellow pig to shut up until she helped. Seok-jin decided to play with her and said that she looks pretty darn cute when she's angry. An-ji was ready to kill him there for saying that, but she was stopped by Han Kyung-hee. She also reminded that fighting in the camp is punishable by immediate disqualification of its participants. The one knows that, and is deliberately trying to take her out. The opportunity will present itself, you just have to wait a little longer. But he kept provoking her and sending her air hearts. At that, Seok-jin turned around, looked at Lee Soo-jun and asked why he stopped to give a massage, and said if he didn't want to, he should speak up or she would embarrass him. Lee Soo-jun started to justify that he was just afraid to interrupt him, that's all. That one laughed and hugged Lee Soo-jun, and told him that there should be no fear between them, for they were a team after all. He then added that Oto should stand behind him, since that was the only way out for such an oaf. The only one he was worried about was the guy who was late. This time the 1st division decided to participate, and it surprised everyone. The 1st and 2nd gates, which are considered the strongest of the 8 signs, are defended by the 1st division. From the very beginning of the camp, the 1st division has refrained from participating. The reason is completely unknown, but rumor has it that they do not accept any weaker than their very own. This means that the intern from the 1st division is incredibly talented this time around. In this company and bunch of rabble, Seok-jin most wanted to see just this trainee. A couple minutes later, a huge and brutal man came out. Everyone thought that this bulky man was the intern, and even Seok-jin was surprised that he had exceeded his expectations. But then Han Kang-Chi walks up, and the bulky man introduces him as a Division 1 trainee. Everyone who was there was very much surprised by an ordinary high school student. After that, they all went outside where the LPU coach, Baek Sarin, met them. She will be giving them their first test. Thanks to the robot's vast experience, it will be able to accurately determine their morale. Even this time, she can see that the contestants are very nervous, and looked like their souls had gone to heal. She especially laughed from the yellow cobblestone face. She's so worried she's gotten smaller. Seok-jin only shouted at Han Kang-Chi, and asked how a guy like him could be a Division 1 trainee. For the life of him, he didn't understand it. Those 2 in the mask swept up that the only division that my intern was a high school senior, which was very surprising. Everyone was looking for a good reason, but couldn't guess. An-ji immediately remembered him, She thought she was the intern, so she decided to keep her thoughts to herself. The only thing that matters now is her grade. But Han Kyung-hee saw that she was kind of nervous and asked if she knew him. But she denied it. Meanwhile, Seok-jin started yelling that it's disrespectful since he represents the first division, and already his presence is an insult to this camp. In a second, Baek Sa-rin was behind his back and toppled him to the ground. She will tolerate any display of emotion, but acts of disobedience to the camp she will not tolerate. Then she announced the first task, namely the team fight. An-ji, Han Kang-Chi, and Mu-young Ho-sang were on the Tiger team. An-ji didn't want to mess with him, but it's a good opportunity to move up in rank. Han Kang-Chi turned around to her and said, "Do you have something to say to me?" She immediately remembered that most terrible night with him, but she wanted to even apologize since her conscience was clear to him. She also added that losing your temper is the way of a hero. But Han Kang-Chi didn't listen to her anymore and switched to Mu-young Ho-sang. He said to him, "Do you have anything to say to me?" He also added that he knew him, but he didn't know what he was talking about. Han Kang-Chi said that he was a member of the team at Narumi Lake Park, and he was there too. He couldn't forget it, because he had a good memory. An-ji started yelling at him and thought he was joking. But Han Kang-Chi didn't even remember her. The wolf team included the wolf proper, Mu-young Seo-sung, and Han Kyung-hee, while the lion team had Seok-jin, Lee Soo-jung, and the T-17 model. Seok-jin warned his team that if they interfered with him, he would kill them. An-ji decided to once again say that her conscience before him was clear, so she wouldn't apologize. But Han Kang-Chi didn't even listen to her and just said okay. After that, Han Kang-Chi continued to communicate with Mu-young Ho-sang and prove that he knows him. An-ji couldn't stand it and just yugoed. After everyone was introduced to the team, Baek Sa-rin announced the first backdrop. A speed raid. A journey in which heroes defeat mobs on a specific map and the goal is the final boss. An ideal opportunity to demonstrate classic and heroic skills. Each team must navigate the map, and the team that can defeat the final yellow boss is the winner. Bosses will get an advantage on the next stage, and the last place will be automatically eliminated. After which, everyone immediately scattered to complete the task. In turn, Seok-jin fired a shot of 1,000 volts. The Tiger team ran accurately as well, but if everyone was ahead, Han Kang-Chi was lagging behind. He was very weak athletically and tired very quickly. An-ji started yelling at him and resenting him for getting tired so quickly. But Han Kang-Chi quickly gave an answer, namely that he actually had a heavy backpack. Only Mu-young Ho-sang tried to calm them down. At this time, Baek Sa-rin was sitting and resting, and was also wondering who would end up first after all. Suddenly, someone called out to her. When she turned around, she saw a team of wolves that had finished their tasks in 10 minutes and 12 seconds. Baek Sa-rin couldn't believe that this team of two could handle the final boss in just 10 minutes. Even the workers couldn't handle it, and even she wouldn't be able to do it. They even laughed and offered to have lunch together. Now the wolf team had won, and there was still the lion team and the tiger team. And this was recognized by all the other teams as they were told on the loudspeaker. And at that time, the lion team had just found the final boss. Then Mu-young Ho-san suggested that they leave Han Kang-Chi here and go on with the two of them. If they stay here, they won't defeat the boss. But that was the only option she didn't like. Therefore, Mu-young Ho-san took Han Kang-Chi on his back, and they traveled onward together. When Mu-young Ho-san asked why they had brought him along in the first place, An-ji didn't even consider such an option. For next is a yellow-ranked boss, and the two of them and it would be too hard. And this guy is quite strong. When Han Kang-Chi asked how she knew about his power, An-ji started to get angry, for he didn't remember her and that pissed her off. This was a time raid after all, and they should defeat the boss as quickly as possible, and they could use the extra hands. But after walking a bunch of meters, they still didn't encounter the usual enemies. Meanwhile, Yo-Anna was looking at the data of this team that won, and was shocked. Even the previous record wasn't 30 minutes, and it belonged to the 4th Division, for the first time since the PLU was founded. This time the camp is a lot more fun than she thought it would be. But she was interrupted by a servant who told her that they had to hurry to the control room because there was a problem with the first building. Meanwhile, the Tiger team finally made it to the final boss. The whole team was very surprised to see such a behemoth. Some smaller monster came out next to the monster looking for food. They immediately started beating him up, except for Han Kang-Chi, for he lacked speed. But there were more and more of these little weirdos, and they were having a hard time. When Han Kang-Chi came to them, they felt much better. As soon as Han Kang-Chi started fighting, he knocked out a couple of them, but one of those weirdos was also able to break through his defense, and on top of that, That was exactly the problem. Body number 1 had escaped. The physical limitations of the Esper suit have been destroyed. He thinks it's just a glitch in the system. The servant offered to roll the test, but Baek-Sarin was against it. The servant didn't understand her thoughts, for they are orange and yellow ranked, which is very unfair. So Baek-Sarin decided to just call it compatibility. At this time, Seok-jin was just fighting the final boss. Seok-jin's electricity and Lee Soo-jun's water really don't mix badly together. Baek-Sarin asked Yo-Anna if she knew what high school students are taking the entrance exam and what they do in such situations. Anna's Yeo replied simply, "It makes sense. And the purpose of the camp is to select the best among the participants through their evaluations and compatibility." Meanwhile, the wolf team was just eating and relaxing. Also, the number 1 attack type is normal, albeit high level. Everyone on the tiger team uses hand-to-hand combat. They're just right for the situation. The tiger team, meanwhile, requested time to discuss strategy. The monster agreed and decided to give them time. They took out pencils and notebooks from Han Kang-Chi's backpack and started drawing a plan. Baek-Sarin was even interested in this. Afterward, with notebooks, they continued the fight. But after 5 minutes, they were having none of it. Muyung Seo-sang used all his last strength for a better result. The monster became very angry as Muyung Seo-sang began to beat him very badly in pain. So he took it and swallowed it, and then it got big, and it tasted like strawberries. Things were not going well for the lion team at this time. They already had 27 ways on the scoreboard. This time they decided to make a water prison, but things didn't go according to plan. The hydration system went into overdrive. The boss has regained 10% of his health. Seok-jin was very angry with Lee Soo-jun for restoring the boss's health, but suddenly a great idea came to Seok-jin. At the same time, there has been cheating on the Tigers team. Anji turned into the spirit of a dog, stage 1 to be exact. On the way, she also... This one wasn't a bad strategy, for the huge monster wasn't exactly hitting them. On the lion team, the T-17 robot activated the battle mode. Robot T-17 struck with all of the boss's strength, and Lee Soo-jun saw an opportunity, so he jumped on his chest and activated the water ground. This time, Lee Soo-jun didn't want to let Master down since he had faith in him. A moment later, there was overhydration, his entire body overflowing with water. Seok-jin hit that big guy at the same time Lee Soo-jun with 100,000 volts. The boss fell, and they finally managed to defeat this monster. Next, the loudspeaker began announcing the team that had advanced to the second round. Except when it was announced that the tiger teams had passed, Lee Soo-jun didn't understand how it was possible since they had just defeated the boss. But a little earlier, the tiger team was still faster in defeating the final monster. Muyung Ho-sang even came out from the boss's belly, except he was without his mask. Before this, Muyung Ho-san was alone right in this belly. He even thought he was already dead. But he smelled blood and realized it was a huge chance to get back in the game. So he ripped his mouth right from the inside out. Anji, Han Kang-Chi even started to be a little afraid of him. Muyung Ho-san used the Goblin Kick, the second secret form. Then I finished that monster for sure. Goblin Strike was a fighting technique used by goblins and had been used since ancient times. Muyung Ho-san was a 28th generation descendant. He couldn't help himself when he smelled the blood that had been spilled because of him. He had disrespected them, so he apologized. And Ji remembered what Master had told her about the 3rd Division. They can harness the power of the local gods, and their potential is beyond their imagination. In the end, the first test was over. Each participant will be given time for treatment and maintenance. After that, everyone should gather in the training room within an hour. Meanwhile, Seok-jin sat in a small room and was sad as he realized that he had messed up. His heart was weak, and he ended up attacking his teammate. This wouldn't have happened if he hadn't taken this helpless guy with him. He then asked someone to believe him one more time and he would get the gold for sure next year. The mysterious voice through the door replied that it was giving him one last chance. He also added that his time in this camp was not over yet. Meanwhile, the cat doctor easily healed Anji's wound. Among the spirits, the Othmas, have been helping people since the dawn of time until now. In this age of peace, they do nothing, so they are here to make a living. Anji was glad that she only had a few scratches. But if it had been on that goblin, things could have been much worse. Ever since she was a little girl, she dreamed of becoming very strong, to stand with legendary heroes in dignity. Suddenly, Han Kang-Chi came out to meet her, and he deliberately approached her, for he had chewed her up. She was surprised, and assumed he wanted to apologize for not being able to do anything on the first test. But it was also a good reason for Anji, as she wanted to take back the words about him being strong. Whereupon she came closer to him, and ordered him to surrender, for weaklings like him were not worthy of becoming a hero. But he didn't have time to say anything before Lee Soo-jun interjected into their conversation. Lee Soo-jung was here for treatment as he was injured in the first test. An-ji had already heard about their fight and was surprised that they had decided to team up so painfully. Lee Soo-jun started to deny it and said that it was all a misunderstanding and that it was his own fault. Lee Soo-jun realized that although Seok-jin was being rude to him, he wasn't bad. In the 12th generation of Division 2 trainees, Seok-jin was the best. And it was Seok-jin who picked Lee Soo-jun from the crowd to be on the team. If it wasn't for him, he wouldn't be here at all. An-ji began to realize why that yellow pig had chosen him. He had thoroughly brainwashed him. Lee Soo-jun still didn't listen to them, and in his opinion, he wasn't worthy of being here at all. Then, afterward, he bowed and wished them good luck, and asked them to try for his place too. Han Kang-Chi walked up to Lee Soo-jun and said, "No one has the right to give up." An-ji heard this, and she told Han Kang-Chi to move already. But to Lee Soo-jun, these weren't just empty words. He really wondered what his true feelings were. Baek Sarin then gathered all the teams and announced that there were 2 teams going to the second round. The Wolves that came first and the Tigers. And unfortunately, the Lion team was eliminated. Lee Soo-jun was very angry at himself for being unable to participate in the camp on his own. He felt very guilty, but it really made him very angry that he couldn't hold these feelings in anymore. Unexpectedly, in a moment, Seok-jin placed his hand on his shoulder. Seok-jin praised him and asked him not to blame himself. After which Baek Sarin began to announce the results. The Tiger team's time is 3:27:06, and the Lion team's time is 3:27:10. And Baek Sarin also said that the camp decided to give them a rare chance to stay here. Lee Soo-jun was already excited that they would finally be given a chance. But suddenly, Seok-jin grabbed his shoulder even harder and swung his arm. Next, there was just lightning all around. Seok-jin poked him and said, "Only one of the team members stays in the camp through the second chance. One knocked out, so the second one goes through automatically." He hoped and believed it very much. Even the blood was visible on his face. Baek Sarin announced that the winner is Seok-jin from the second division. Seok-jin started laughing, cheering, and jumping. He wasn't even worried about Lee Soo-jun. An-ji wanted to take revenge on that disgusting bastard, but she was stopped by Han Kyung-hee. They realized that it could make the situation even more problematic. The only one who wasn't afraid to approach was Han Kang-Chi. Seok-jin laughed as he approached. After all, he was putting him up as a rival for himself. Meanwhile, Baek Sarin decided to defuse the situation and announce the second duel challenge, since those who passed the challenge had already been determined. But those 2 didn't even listen to her. Seok-jin found this funny, so he decided to challenge him one-on-one. An-ji guessed that he wanted to do something over the top, but still, she knew he wasn't stupid and wouldn't do it. After a second, Han Kang-Chi had already taken a swing at Seok-jin. Seok-jin was slightly surprised at this kid's strength. He didn't hesitate, and he retaliated. But fortunately, or unfortunately, An-ji stepped into their fight and quickly pulled Han Kang-Chi out of there. Seok-jin started yelling at him for her barging into their duel. It all got to Baek Sarin, so she yelled for everyone to stop. She threatened that if they continued, she would throw them out right now. There was nothing left for them to do but actually obey her. After a while, all the subjects moving on to Stage 2 were confirmed. Therefore, it was announced that Stage 2 would begin in 10 minutes. Meanwhile, An-ji and Han Kyung-hee stood side by side and remained silent. An-ji felt like she had a lot of words to say, so she yelled, I know, I'm sorry." Han Kyung-hee laughed because she hadn't even said anything yet. An-ji admits she was wrong to get involved, but that pig was serious. That pointy-headed one would definitely get hurt badly or even die. Han Kyung-hee wondered why that was a bad thing. And also Han Kyung-hee added that if she had developed sympathy for him because she was on the same team with him, then it needs to stop, or it will definitely become his weakness. She also reminded us that everyone here is each other's competitor, but that wasn't that important right now. After all, the first fight of the second stage between Han Kang-Chi from the 1st Division and Seok-jin from the 3rd Division was starting. Now they're clearly not going to be interrupted. And overseeing all of this will be the LPU inspector, Yang Hoi. But before the fight, Han Kang-Chi decided to ask what PvP was. Yang Hoi looked at him and thought he was a fool. Unlike regular PvP, there's another rule here, and that's reward-based PvP. PvP is a player versus player competition. You can use weapons, skills, and anything else you want. The competition ends when one of the participants surrenders or becomes incapacitated. But if they can win, they can take enemy characteristics as a reward. The amount of a characteristic can be adjusted, so Jan Hoi asked how much they were betting. Seok-jin decided to put all his attributes. He decided to put up everything he had accumulated throughout his life. And he also suggested for Han Kang-Chi to also shell out money because he had too few stats. Han Kang-Chi agreed to his condition, except he decided not to take the reward. He wanted to give everything to Lee Soo-jun. Seok-jin started laughing really hard, asked to be realistic. Han Kang-Chi realized that if he took away his stats, he wouldn't get off his back, after which Seok-jin agreed to his terms. Seok-jin was already tired of talking to him, and he wanted to get this over with quickly. He took off his sweater, and what looked like tentacles emerged from his back. Next, he used his suit's power 100% at all. He was fully utilizing the armored suit. Seok-jin wanted to tear him to pieces quickly. It was the Brain's tech. The 3rd Division Brain is a group of heroes who use advanced technology called electric light. They are very advanced in science and technology, and these technologies allow them to rise above the capabilities of ordinary heroes. No one believed Han Kang-Chi, as he was just a high school student to them. The only thing that was strange was why it was using all its power at once. Before the fight, Seok-jin felt uneasy. It was as if he could sense death in his strength, and it frightened him. But then he realized that he was imagining it. There was no one who could defeat his fully armored suit. That was science. With that suit, he was sure he'd kill him in one hit. After which Young Hoi waved his hand and the fight began. Seok-jin immediately punched him with his big fist into his body. Everyone was blinded by the bright light from such a blow. Just as suddenly someone said, what a shame. When everyone turned around, they saw Young Pun, who promised to beat up Han Kang-Chi if he failed again. To the surprise of everyone except Young Pun, Han Kang-Chi was able to repel his fool, and even broke his arm into small pieces. And after that, Han Kang-Chi jumped on top of him and roasted him right in the chest, and a flash appeared again. Meanwhile, the Heroes vs. Robots event was being broadcast, hosted by Luna. And then this Luna came up to Mr. Lightning Man and asked about the T4 robot. This lightning bolt started telling me that with the advancement of science, one day, robots would be able to protect society. But not today. The man even had fans. Everyone couldn't wait for the show to start after all. But the fight has just begun, and the hero Lightning Man is defeated by the T4 robot. This advanced technology is scaring everyone. Technology dominates this era, and Seok-jin is this concentration of advanced technology. Therefore, Seok-jin could not and would not lose to this schoolboy. Seok-jin on his last strength decided to use the discharge, but unfortunately, he used up all of the suit's charge. Even Young Pun had noticed that the 2nd Division's costume was quite good, and he wasn't the only one with a costume. Han Kang-Chi also had his own secret. Meanwhile, a Lightning Man approached them. He was the 2nd Division of heroes, nicknamed Knight. It had been a very long time since their last meeting, and he was very excited. Since it was a long time ago, he decided to greet them in a heroic pose. Except that Young Pun was tired of hearing it and asked why he came here if he lost his job. This affected the Lightning Man a bit. He noticed that no one in Division 2 was listening to him, not even his dog Bobby. Still, the 1st Division trainee is incredible. Lightning Man couldn't believe that someone who had only recently joined the company would be so strong. And it's all Young Pun's work? He's done a lot of work this month. And to put it in words, it's all anger control. Young Pun often beat him up. Han Kang-Chi was in a lot of pain, but he did well. This of course pissed Han Kang-Chi off, and he fought back. Anger. That's what made this strike happen. That's how he defeated the fat one. Everyone was surprised at this guy's strength. No one even believed in him. It was hard to believe he was that strong. Han-Ji remembered calling him a weakling and telling him to give up. She was very angry that she had been fooled. So Han-Ji jumped into the ring and started calling out to him. Looking at Han Kang-Chi, she recalled a pleasant memory from her childhood. Namely, she recognized in his gait the hero who saved her. Han Kang-Chi came over and asked what was wrong. Then Han-Ji blushed and asked in an awkward voice why he was pretending to be weak. But she came to her senses quickly and slapped him for cheating. Lightning Man couldn't believe that their division had already been knocked out. It makes him so upset that he can't stop his tears. Young Pun was disgusted to watch his behavior. He was disgusted. Meanwhile, Joanna approached them and asked them to follow him, for there was a serious problem. She showed an article where it was written that the Peace Treaty Association Humanity Association signing ceremony of the project by the connecting and ordinary roads of Narura are unknown. The plan developed simultaneously by Narura, and the Humanity Association was peace and cooperation of countries. It meant that ordinary people could now go to Naruraku. All the workers would like to go there. But a servant came up to them and announced that the first round was over. The builders did not revive that it was over so quickly, but still thought that everything must be all right. Suddenly, one of the builders noticed a strange change in the servant's face. But when the man turned around to ask, he only said that he had imagined it. The second round of 4th Division Han Kyung-hee versus 3rd Division's Mu-Young-ho Sun Yang-hoi also offered Han Kyung-hee the opportunity to put the advantage she won in the last test. Mu-Young-ho Sun decided to bet half of his stats. Han Kyung-hee decided to do the exact same thing and maintain her advantage. Everyone understood that this woman was strong, for she would use overwhelming chi to make the opponent her prey. After which Yang-hoi waved his hand and the fight began. Mu-Young-ho Sun immediately stripped off his clothes and was ready to pound her. Mu-Young-ho Sun noticed that the one just standing there, so he decided to attack her first. But to the surprise of everyone, he didn't hit it, or rather as if he had passed it, and drove his fist straight into the floor. After which, Han Kyung-hee said in a calm voice, "How about mountains?" In a second, Mu-Young-ho Sun found himself in the mountains. He immediately thought it was just a hallucination, but he began to see a bunch of eyes and huge monsters in front of him. But on the other hand, if it really is the mountains, she's feeling great. As soon as Mu-Young-ho Sun decided to fight the monsters, they suddenly disappeared. Next, Mu-Young-ho Sun heard Han Kyung-hee behind him and decided to strike quickly, and he actually hit her face. As soon as that body fell, he saw that instead of Han Kyung-hee, he saw his older brother Mu-Young-so Sun there. After that, a huge snake appeared behind him. Han Kyung-hee wanted to find his fears and scare him. No matter how much he resists, fear makes him less in front of overwhelming creatures. It makes people tremble before the mountains, after which Mu-Young-ho Sun apologized to the master. After all, he could defeat her if he was human. He also remembered how, during one training session, he had asked a master how to fully embrace the power of a goblin. But there's no way they can actually exist with goblin strength. They have to hold on tight, like in a tug of war. If he breaks through the wall and lets the beast out, he will only be angry at the beast. And if he holds the rope weakly, the chi of the goblin will take over his body in less than a minute. Therefore, Mu-Young-ho Sun did not forget about the master's instruction. As long as the goblin doesn't get a hold of him, he'll be done in 1 minute. After which he used the forbidden goblin arts, and after a couple seconds, he did find her real in this illusion. He managed to hurt her again and punched her right in the face. As soon as he turned around, he saw her before his face again. He only had 40 seconds left, so he couldn't delay any longer. He attacked her again and punched her in the face again. But the reality was different. Mu-Young-ho Sun stood still and did not move, and therefore was no longer able to continue fighting, and the fight was over. For a 3rd Division goblin, being suppressed like this in the beginning was very low. But basically, as expected, Han Kyung-hee won, for she is just incredibly strong. You can win if you are not human. The level of this stage is not that high. The size of her power feels more like a huge mountain. She was truly frightening. When Mu-Young-ho Sun came to his senses, he decided to kill her out of anger. But he was stopped by Mu-Young-seo Sun. Mu-Young-ho Sun asked how all this even happened, and then Mu-Young-seo Sun explained that she suppressed him with her chi, and the man lost consciousness and lost. Then announced the winner of the second round is Han Kyung-hee from the 4th Division. After the service, the 3rd round will begin. Meanwhile, Young Pun, Yo Anna, and the Lightning Man were looking at the T-17 robot. Anna started to tell me that these are all quotas. Staff from the headquarters are taking their place. That's it, because the 1st Division is always missing. That's all they can fly off to have an unimpeded test. Staff, they call this modern robot Electro Brain. After that, with her power, she grabbed the Lightning Man with her strength as if with a rope. Young Poon didn't understand what she was doing and ordered her to tell everything immediately, or else he would kill her. In response, she shouted Jong Yul's name. Young Poon wondered what the hairy man had to do with it, and Yo Anna told him that Cheon Yul himself had ordered him to say his name if he wanted to kill her. Next, she returned to the case and asked T-17 what his purpose was. The T-17 robot began to say that his job was to be an observer in the 2nd Division. He noticed the deviations in Seok Jin's behavior. After doing research on his emotions, he was not upset after the flight. He felt fear. After tampering with the suit's program, he heard his dialogue with someone along the lines of, "You have to calm down, otherwise you'll die." Cheon Yul said that Division 2 is strange, but he can't investigate it openly either, for it's his family. So Yo Anna placed T-17 for observation in the same team with them. Plus, their camp has had a tradition since the very first season. After all the tests, the person with the best score is rewarded with some symbolic object. Next, they show a grandfather statue of the golden katana. The Garda will actually be a piece of his golden armor. They're just celebrating humanity's first victory. It's just ore without a drop of magical power. And to give it to the best student would be significant. Then Yeo Poon forgave where the sculpture was actually hidden. She pulled a keychain out of her pocket and said, "Here, At times like this, it's easy to think it's hidden somewhere deep underground. But it wasn't hard to get. It's a souvenir sold at the War Memorial Shop. The gold that pig was trying to get isn't gold at all. It's just a souvenir. Meanwhile, the Lightning Man finally untied that rope and started yelling why they wouldn't untie it. He really doesn't know anything, and no one in Division 2 told him anything. Young-poo and Yo-Anna didn't believe what he said and still thought he was lying. He also started yelling so much that young Pinu told him to shut up. At the end of the day, someone's messing with this camp, but they couldn't stop everything on their own accord. If they don't find anything, they could be disciplined or have their budget cut. Young Pun was furious as he didn't understand why it was such a big deal right now. Yo-Anna shouted at him not to speak so lightly, because he didn't even know how many people worked here. She called him to find out about it. After all, it might be nothing. In the moment, the robot T-17 said the people on whose shoulders the responsibility and danger rests. He also decided to defend himself even more strongly. After that, Yo-Anna also tied up the T-17 robot as well. Yo-Anna didn't understand why the man started talking if she didn't allow it. T-17 didn't understand why he wasn't allowed to speak when she herself lived by her creator's orders. She looked at him and didn't know what he was even talking about. T-17 said Genesis 3:5, God knows that her eyes will be open as long as she eats it, and she will be like God if she knows good and evil. To be like the Creator is the nature of humanity from the moment of its inception, and the meaning of humanity is determined by their own decisions. But he was human, and he may well have been. Yo-Anna was very frightened because he was pretending to be a human being. Young-Pun decided to take matters into her own hands and asked her to move away. After which, with a sweep of one hand, Young-Pun cut off his head with his fan. He could stand listening to this literary nonsense and ordered the truth to be told. Young-Pun asked him, "Who are you?" A laugh was heard from the robot's body. The robot possessed by a human, the Holy Bible passage, the red changing eyes in the climax. It's all very jarring. After which, the head of the monster girl came out of the body. The janitors had already worked their shift and were going home. But for some reason, a servant stepped into the middle of the room. His mouth got really big and he yelled, "Run!" Next, a brutal fighter nicknamed Glutton began chopping everyone into small pieces. Of course, it was a villain who was sent here undercover. And out of the servant's mouth came the older one. He began to shout that she had overdone it and that she was too naughty, but still got there in time for the gold. None of the heroes realized how it happened. When they were on the second floor, everything was plunged into darkness. Except for Anji, she was the only one who could see. They came out of the blue, and everyone was killed except them. Literally everyone. They had the best characteristics among the camp workers, and they were killed so easily. And it was obvious from the rank that it was a red. Next, this elder ordered to mess up nothing with his dogmatic behavior, and further said that this gold was needed for our plan. Glutton got tired of listening to all this, and just killed him because the Khan was so noisy. She hates them all, but she hates the chatter the most. And now she's decided to move on to heroes. But no one dared to fight against her since she had such a strong, overwhelming aura. It was hard for them to even move. Muyung So-san ordered his brother Muyung Ho-san to hide behind his back if he didn't want to die. He was ready to protect him again. Gluttony liked this hero, for he clearly understood something. Muyung So-san didn't know how many times his blade would get her, so he really wanted to dispel this intrigue. He used the art of the blade, the fourth form, after which he used a ghostly punch. Gluttony, though huge, was still able to dodge his frame. But still, Muyung Ho-san was not worried as his sister is a master of all martial arts and chi. She is a genius that appears once every 100 years, and only she can win. Muyung Seo-sang used the rain punch next, and this time she did hit a glutton. It was the first time she had ever been cut at all. So she decided to do something new to him. More specifically, use the shredding sword with a secret form. Anji stood nearby and watched it all. She was shocked as this glutton was definitely a red-ranked person. She couldn't believe that she had defeated the red rank alone. But suddenly Gluttony stood up and hit Muyung So-san. Her ribs and neck were broken. She didn't know what the force was. She began to pamper with blood, and her head began to spin. She already thought it was a hallucination, but dismissed the thought as she definitely felt the impact. Gluttony didn't want to leave it like that and decided to finish things off, or rather jumped on it. On her last strength, she managed to get a little away from the blow and put up a block from the blow. Afterward, Gluttony revealed that the most important thing in wrestling is the twist. The performance mesmerizes the audience with twists and flips, the art of winners and losers in the ring. That's the beauty of wrestling, except that Muyung Seo-sang said she was done. Obozra appeared in the mountains and in the forest. She was enveloped by a huge snake. but Gluttony immediately realized it was an illusion. That one was of course Han Kang-Chi. Muyung Ho-san immediately ran to his sister. She stood up and told him not to come near her. She reiterated that if he didn't want to be caught and killed, she ordered him to stay there as he couldn't manage here. After that, Han Kang-Chi used a deadlock. Han Kang-Chi ripped Glutton's head off. Everyone started to rejoice that they had finally won. But a second later, Gluttony appeared behind Han Kang-Chi's back and impaled her with her arm drill. Afterwards, she began to spin her around on her drill. At that, Gluttony laughed very loudly, as she enjoyed the performance very much. She tore Han Kang-Chi to pieces. They have no more hope. They didn't even have a chance left. An-ji, who couldn't do anything at all, was especially afraid. Meanwhile, Gluttony was hungry for the next one. Once upon a time, a very long time ago, there was a devastating explosion. With an unexplained explosion that destroyed an entire city, the worst event in the Age of Peace began. 1.2 million deaths. 700,000 traumatized in the midst of this catastrophe. And there were just Muyung Seo-sang and Muyung Ho-sang. Then they promised each other that they would be the strongest, and they will protect each other. A year later, they had then already gone to learn sword fighting. Even then, Muyung Ho-sang had already decided to become inarticulately strong, and also wanted to protect his sister all the time. After saying that, Muyung Seo-sang got angry and beat him up since she can fend for herself. In this sparring session was a receiver who would go on to be named Myung. At that time, Muyung So-san was being recruited by Meng, 12 years old, and she was already a Meng, which was very unbelievable. There were even rumors that if it wasn't for her age, she would have been a mercenary by now. She is a genius who is born once every 100 years. Before his sister left, Muyung Ho-sang ran out to her and asked her to stop. He shouted to her, "Wait, I'll be like you soon too. I will become strong and protect you." Except that Muyung Seo-sang upset him by saying that when he reached her, she would already be much farther away. He will never be on par with him. He didn't understand her words then. And when he finally realized them, too much time had passed. She'd gotten farther away that I couldn't even see where she was. One day during layout, his mentor decided to ask why he chose to learn martial arts. There must be a reason for him to become strong. It's the only way to get stronger. He wasn't verbose, and said he just wanted to protect someone. That's his reason. And that's what he's there for. But it's hard for a child like him to protect someone who doesn't need his help. It exhausts his will to martial arts, which meant that he wanted to get this way, faster than anyone else. Even if it's an infinitely high mountain, there's always a bigger mountain. When faced with the deaths of those you want to protect, and you're always weaker than them. No, nothing that makes me feel so hopeless. When Gluttony approached An-ji, she simply fell to her knees in surrender. There was someone she had to meet, and she didn't want to die like this. So she gave up and begged for mercy. She just killed that guy in a fit of rage. But she needs to bring the gold, or she's in trouble and it's really pissing her off. That's why she saved them. Or she'll die if you leave them alone. But still, one person did die. They were strong, so she used force. And what she should do, she didn't even know. When Muyung Ho-sang was young, he made a small sacrifice for strength. His mentor and Muyung So-san were there, and Muyung Ho-san was in the role of vessel. That's the only reason why the Goblin sect took them in. They wanted to give Muyung Ho-san in the role of a vessel at the age of 9 to the family of the Goblin sect before they die. This was the secret of training the Goblin sect's vessel that had been protecting the sect's frost power since ancient times. Because the Goblin is always looking for a chance to break free with its power. The vessel has to face the threat of death every lazy day. There's no stopping a mentor from doing that, because a Goblin is a great power that their family can never lose. Muyung So-san really was more suited to be his vessel, but she was 10, and that's really sad. Thanks to this, his younger brother's fate is sealed. Except that Muyung Seo-sang knew that her brother's willingness would never let him go. In order for his will not to reach that level, he will become stronger. Gluttony decided to kill An-ji since the Golds call themselves heroes. But she noticed that she was an obedient dog, and her drill was almost embedded in her. But suddenly there was a burst of some kind of energy from behind them. Muyung So-san realized what had happened and asked out of her last strength not to do it. It was Muyung Ho-san in the form of a goblin. He took the face of the glutton, and with all his might, he stabbed it into the ground. More specifically, it was the Sukshin goblin. Meanwhile, others had a problem with the Black Sphere. Deputy Camp Operations Manager Jagal Chun was yelling at everyone as he wanted to get rid of that damn black orb faster. Except the others weren't happy either, as they're doing the best they can and draining this shit because of Heya. So you just had to be patient. Jagal Chan only said that they are useless spirits. Because of this Suyazi, They don't know if the people inside the building will survive, but they can't report the situation either. He could not believe that the security of this camp had been compromised at a time when the operating budget was being cut every year. The camp could have been liquidated, so security was paramount. Next, Jagal Jong shouted out where the group leader Joanna was, but since he couldn't find her, he decided to go there himself where she was. Except there was a problem. The place where it had been had disappeared without a trace. Jagal Chan couldn't believe something was missing. Meanwhile, Young Pun came out of some door, and Joanna followed him. They walked to the camp with only Young Poon knowing where to go and what to do. Young Pun only wished for one thing, and that was to kill that bastard. But the Lightning Man sat tied up and watched it happen. He was very angry, and he was trying to get them to release him. Meanwhile, Seokshin Goblin was very glad that it had been so long since he had last inhaled the flavor of this world. Anji guessed that it was clearly Muyung Ho-san. An extremely strong devourer was knocked out with a single blow. A creature that could stop a red devourer with a single blow could only be a goblin. Seokshin Goblin also didn't understand why the sky was so dark, and started accusing that these people had broken it. Seokshin Goblin also saw Muyung So-sang and was happy to see her, for he had missed her. Anji thought that they were saved and the two get along well since they are of the same clan. But to her surprise, Seokshin Goblin took Muyung So-san by the throat. 12 years ago, he remembers it like it was yesterday. He's been waiting for this moment. The day he kills her. Anji ran to help, but Seokshin Goblin hit her with just one finger and she just flew away. Seokshin Goblin saw that Muyung So-sang looked really bad, so he would lobe and make things quick. She tried to say something, but she didn't have the strength. Seokshin Goblin threw it, as he couldn't tolerate too much blood on his hands. He tried to be calm, but he had a brain and his strength left his body. While he was shaking out the blood, Gluttony woke up and flew into him with great force. But he managed to put up a block. He didn't understand how she dared brag about her strength to a goblin. Seokshin Goblin grabbed her leg and started spinning her around. And then he just ditched her. Anji was horrified. She remembered that Muyung Ho-san enjoyed the smell of blood until the moment he enjoyed it. But this guy passed out immediately when blood got on his hands. And plus, Muyung Ho-sang wouldn't want to kill his sister. He's like an unconscious goblin to Muyung Ho-sang. Anji decided to brainstorm and come up with solutions to the situation. And she did have something in mind, so she walked over to the goblin and addressed him. Anji revealed that she is actually Go-Lo B, goblin-loving believer. That's why she came all this way to see him. She heard that he didn't like that woman over there, so she brought her here as a gift to him. But these Taurians dared to cover his gift to the goblin with blood. She wanted to see that the goblin had made her shiver in blood. And this man is a believer who wants to kill goblins. Their name is So-Kill B. The goblin turned around and asked exactly if it was true. Anji remembered at that moment that it was just like a story in real life. Goblin believe and people lie, so she started nodding that it was the very real truth. The goblin believed her and threw her a small thing. It was a pill, and one should feed it to Muyung Seo-san. It would stop the bleeding on her neck. This fool's life belongs to her, so he will not commend her to die of her own accord. He was walking towards Gluttony to kill her, as no one dares make fun of goblins, and would make her pay for what she had done. Gluttony could see that he was truly disappointed that he believed such a deception. So if the one wanted her to pay for everything she had done, she ordered her to make her pay for it first. But the goblin wouldn't give up that easily, and he kicked his legs right into her jaw. Afterward, he took her by the waist and toppled her over to the door. Next, he tossed her up and punched her in the chest. Making too much noise from the start really bothers him. But as expected, that didn't stop Gluttony. She moved to a safe distance. Afterward, it started to look like she was cloned. This was something new to the goblin, but that didn't scare him as he activated his power. It was a form of the Shutterwalk race of awakened goblins. 10 hours later, he was still battling that Gluttony. Anji had been sitting and watching Muyung So-san the whole time. They were shocked that this red monster was endlessly jumping and holding on, and after all, several hours had passed. This goblin is really strong. But suddenly the older man that Gluttony killed came up to them. He told them to stop at last. They put shackles on the goblin and he couldn't even resist. They recovered the gold. The senior thanked Gluttony that she had gained a lot of time. Gluttony was surprised since gold is one of the heroes. But of course that wasn't true since she can't be assigned such a task. As expected, it was the right decision. Gluttony grabbed him by the neck and said something about just lying and that she was obligated to kill him. The elder added that all their plans are the will of the others. But she's not going to go against their will. He was taken, and she let him go, after which they were about to leave. Just as suddenly, the goblin broke free from the shackles, and he flew straight at the two. The goblin wanted to grab and kill the elder by the head, but Gluttony threw herself on the corner of his arm, thus protecting her. Meanwhile, the older man was already in a different place. He fooled them with that action. But he didn't expect that kind of power from a 4th Division guy. Meanwhile, the goblin was holding Gluttony by the neck. There was a change, but it wasn't such a bad plan, since they had recovered the gold. In fact, he was a noble-looking red agent of the Remainers, the puppeteer. Now it was his partner's turn. More specifically, the same one that was in the T-17 robot. But it was no surprise to the goblin. This guy is interested in their blood. It was unfair to only call him a puppet that could fight well. It was interesting in its own way. The goblin decided to check it out now. It was fate. These were good times. But now was the time for her death. And he was about to kill her, but suddenly someone and something jabbed him in the back. He collapsed unconscious on the floor. They were spirits that were trying to save the heroes. They quickly began calling for medics as they had 4 survivors, 2 trainees, and 2 unknown people. Jiggle-chan quickly ran up to the heroes and asked where the others were. He starts shaking Anji and asking her what, after all, happened. But she herself knows little. All she knows is that it was all in the dark. And then a mutant-level Red appeared. Jigal-chan called the phones, then began to report that Class Red had killed several camp interns and squad interns, right inside the squad. And also the security of the camp has been compromised. But they will try to find out the reason. And most likely it will be very difficult, although someone will be held responsible for this incident. The spirits knew it was their special anesthetic that made him fall from the full dose. But then it turned out that the needle had broken and the drug hadn't gotten into him. So they got to the point where it was just like going to sleep. Either way, they're quarantining him, except that Muyung Seo-sang was against it, for he had protected her. Just as suddenly, a servant came up to Jigal-chan and said that they found one of the interns who was overseas. Jigal-chan turned around and asked, "Who?" Yeoanna called Jigal-chan to call headquarters right now and tell them to send agents to the Utopia building as soon as possible. They have to stop Yo-Poon before they kill that girl. Jigal-chan asked her to think carefully. If they notify headquarters of this situation without any countermeasures, their camp would be destroyed. Yeoanna shouted at him once more and explained that if they couldn't stop Young Poon, not only would the camp be in danger, but all the heroes would be too. Meanwhile, Young Pun was already nearby near the Utopia building, and Utopia's boss suspected nothing and made herself coffee. Just as suddenly Young Pun broke the glass right into her kitchen. She kept waiting for them to meet again. Young Pun ordered her to shut up and answer his question. Did she kill Cheon-yul? She's tired of him, as he's hitting on the wrong questions again. The right question to ask is not, who killed him? But, why did you kill him? Young Poon didn't care. He ordered to tell where Cheon-yul was now or else he would kill her. She of course didn't believe his words since only she knows where Cheon-yul is. That being said, Young Pun was surprised that she was even human. But the answer was simple. Most of human history has been on the side of evil. She knows it's frustrating, but morality means little to them. They just work. They give their clients the best advice they expect because it's their robot. 12 years ago, the Age of Peace began when the war between good and evil ended. And the people who needed peace the most were the people on the dark side. 18 years ago, the Age of Evil collapsed in the Fouriad War when evil was destroyed and Lord Seitan came to an end. They knew that. That was a defeat unlike any they had experienced up to that time. It was a complete defeat for the fall of evil. The key word that prompted them was their utopia. This is the story of a multitude of characters whose reason for existence has disappeared and simply collapsed. The story turns, and the characters fall again. In the sickness they call peace. This really pissed Young Poon off. So he toppled her to the ground and ordered her not to cheat with her mouth, for he would never fall for it. He repeated again his main question, where is Chonol? Even if he can't kill her, it would be a lot easier if he ripped her face to shreds or cut off her arm. That's because he's a strong but stupid, righteous but innocent idiot. The standards of right and wrong have collapsed because of this disease. Humanity has made its choice. After which she put some sort of thing on her tongue. A second later, his head exploded. A minute later, agents from the NH Nation of Humanity flew into the mission. They were about to open fire if he even made a move, and it was all over the news. And now everyone knew that Utopia CEO Shin Marie had been murdered. It looked like the CEO was killed with no mercy at all, after which we are transported back in time to an ordinary city. And underneath it is an old door, and in it were little Han Kang-Chi and her mother. They didn't have much money in their families, and that's why Han Kang-Chi had to steal. But he was exposed once, and had to be very quick to avoid getting into an even more unpleasant situation. No matter where he's been, he always goes back. There was a lot of trash in the apartment, but it didn't bother them. When he returned, the mother thought his son had just gone to play again. Suddenly he saw a puddle at his mother's feet, but he guessed it was just wet clothes. So he decided to clean it up since no one else would do it but him. While he was cleaning up, his mother came up to him with knives, and I asked him, You're not my son, I won't fall for that again." At this, Han Kang-Chi felt as if he felt nothing and his emotions had left him. She then began waving her hand with the knife around the room. After a few seconds, it was as if her seizure had passed. She grabbed her son and started apologizing, and also, she was sorry. One day she left her baby boy. Mom is so tired and everyone will forget and start their lives over. So he had to forget his mother. But this Han Kang-Chi simply couldn't do. The mother looked at her little boy one last time and closed the door. When the door closed and darkness filled the room, he realized that his emotions hadn't left him. Suddenly, someone opened the door. It was Yo Pun, wearing some sort of white garment. Han Kang-Chi came out of the closet and asked what his teacher was doing here. Still, the door to his childhood was actually opened by his father. Young Poon started yelling at him for his reaction, since in his place, he would be wondering what was going on and why he was wearing those clothes. After which he put his hands on his head and told him to shut up. Young Pun said the words "pass down," and a ball of power formed around him. Of course he was giving him power. There was just the question of whether he could give him that much power in this state. After which he said to find him in 3 days, with team members that fit him. It's all reckless, but right now he can only have faith in him. After which Han Kang-Chi woke up in the real world. People immediately ran up to him and began to ask how he was feeling, for he was lying in the hallway because of his injuries. Jagal-chan saw this and said to immediately take him to the infirmary and run to the control room immediately. Afterward, a servant ran up to Jagal-chan and told the news that Master Young Pun was accused of killing a civilian. He was arrested and is being held in Naruka prison. The next day, it was all over the news that Utopia director Shin Marie had been murdered at 2 in the morning. A suspect had snuck into her office from the top of the Utopia building. He is believed to be the perpetrator of the crime. According to the police statement, it was a brutal murder. The victim's body was so mutilated that it was difficult to identify her face. Shin Marie was hailed as the future of humanity for her journey to peace. Her death shocked many people. Meanwhile, the alleged killer was a 29-year-old man from the Heroes Union. He was arrested on the spot. Motive is still unknown. Regarding this shocking incident, the Heroes Union had yet to make a statement. Everyone was scared, for all the problems were related to the heroes. According to a National Static Institute questionnaire, 97.2% of those surveyed said heroes should not exist. And that's a huge difference from the 2.8% who say heroes should exist. Even now, the people of their cities are taking to the streets. Massive demonstration and tying govs to distribution. The heroes who protected our world turned out to be capable of fitting into the world. They became an insane group, and it wasn't until after the assassination. Now it's time to protect the society from them. 14 deaths, 9 camp staff, and 1 dead trainee from the 4th Division on the corpses disappeared, cause unknown. 5 people injured and traumatized, including trainees. And 1 from the 1st Division is missing. Kwok Laekwon was the vice president of the Humanity Association. He didn't realize what a limitless occurrence this was. Joanna began to report that from the testimony of the survivors and the situation together, they have concluded that this was a plan put together by Naruraka and the Utopia group. She believes they need to deal with it before it's too late. Except there were questions. The control room she was talking about had returned, and there was no proof of Naruraki's involvement. The only thing left is the testimony of the trainees, and their heroes are trainees. People will no longer believe the truth, especially the heroes. And someone in high places said she's trying to cover up Young Poon's insanity. Even Cheon-Yul understood. Revenge for a living person was the motive behind the murder. Except Cheon-Yul didn't understand why they couldn't be fooled by obvious tricks. Young Poon said that there were some difficulties. Gil Taeon, a member of the Humanity Association, was also displeased since he believed she should have been ready for team leader. He didn't even want to see me and told me to get lost. Oh Sadal added that heroes who make 90% of citizens hate them. It's really sad. Kim Nam-hoo will lead the rest of us to genius as well. Gil Taeon liked that thought from the vice president and offered to pull him out when it was covered by insurance. Kwok Laekwon decided to end this meeting and summarized that everyone had the same opinion. So as of today, he disbanded the 1st Division. Cheon-Yul stood up and began to resent, since he wouldn't deny there was a problem. Even so, they couldn't catch up or disband them right now. In his opinion, it was a very hasty decision. Kwok Laekwon realized how much he cared a lot about the 1st Division. but on policy meant that in order to get, he had to give something up. After that, Cheon-yul stopped objecting to anything without any countermeasures, so he just asked for 1 day to resolve the situation. The rest of us didn't care. That's why Kwak Lakwon disbanded the 1st Division after all. After a while, a huge security guard was already standing outside the 1st Division office. He also had kids coming up to him to take pictures. As he suddenly took the girl's cell phone, everyone thought he was about to break it or throw it away. But he actually sat down and took selfies with this girl. But the crowd of people who gathered near him did not understand what was going on and who he was. Then rumors began to circulate again that this was how the heroes' unit was being dealt with. And they started blaming the heroes for the drop in housing prices and that they should have stopped it earlier. Except the boss of this SWAT team didn't know 100 years of us cheering the endings to these times and welcoming a new beginning. Still, they began to advance straight to the office. They also expected to receive applause after the mission was completed. There was even a thought that it might be a trap, since Hwarang hadn't responded since then. On the way to the office, something strange was going on. There was some kind of barrier, and the leading members are not working. Basically, the boss knew something like this was going to happen. Or rather, he even hoped so he decided to call Hwarang. He asked the master where he was, and why he was not answering any call. Toot only said that he was in the hospital, and it was quiet. He then introduced himself. His name was Kim Jae-hun, and he was the NH team leader. He had heard that he would cooperate with the disbanding of the 1st Division, except there was a question as to why she had set up a barrier. In the hallway, the whole thing was just, there are no heroes in the 1st Division right now. Meanwhile, Li Song was already solving problems. The disbanding of the 1st Division is the company's decision, and the employees have to follow that decision. And Lee Seong can't restore that disbandment. Kim Ta-ni knew it was impossible, but it's very strange. The incident with Master Young Poon was a huge ode for them, the heroes. He realizes that it's the company's decision. But after just 1 day of Master's arrest, the 1st Division was disbanded. Everything happens very quickly. Master Hwarang accepted the disbandment without any argument. It was as if everything had been planned. Therefore, Kim Ta-ni asked for help very strongly, because there was no one else to turn to but him. Lastly, Lee Seong decided to say 2 things. First, he just told them that the disbandment was a headquarters decision, so the decision should be taken seriously. Second, never use the word conductor again. This is a company. Kim Ta-ni really asked for 3 days to suspend the disbandment. Until then, she will find a way no matter what. We couldn't just dissolve the 1st Division. Lee Seong realized that no matter what he says, she just doesn't listen whether it was before or now. The decision should be taken seriously. However, if it wasn't the company's job, things would be different. But there is one character who is not in the company at all. He's the one who attacked the SWAT team. They started shooting at him, but he hid behind barrels and stopped. When the SWAT team went to check what was wrong with him, a net fell on them. And after that, the hero jumped out and started shooting. This hero was very happy with the new light armor version 7.0, which worked well in real combat. The quick suppression with total fire was also effective. They should be surprised by this sudden change. And also, they won't be able to attack him again so quickly. He has plenty of time to reorganize his defensive zone again. While he was thinking about it, someone ran up to him and punched him in the face. It was just offensive leader Kim Jae-hun, and he gave the order to tear him apart very quickly. When the hero started shooting at him, and then the leader thought it was some kind of toy because he easily stopped these projectiles. But it was actually a distraction, and the hero was behind his back. Kim Jae-hun grabbed his leg and advised him not to play such games. After that, Kim Jae-hun slammed him hard against the ground. Kim Jae-hun realized that he was an unknown hero hiding in the 1st Division, but he was too ordinary for a hero. Kim Jae-hun wanted to finish him off with a leg kick, but Hero put up a block and deflected it. The hero grabbed his leg and activated the electric shock. Unfortunately, this leader broke the hero's armor. With an overhead attack, he ruined the strength of his suit, so it couldn't go on like this any longer. Without his armor and suit, he wouldn't be able to do a thing. Compared to this monster, he's just a regular kid. The big guy then grabbed the hero again and sent him into the wall. In Kim Jae-hun's opinion, ordinary people can't become heroes. They will only hinder the world. Eventually, even this pseudo-heroine died. As suddenly on his hand turned on the system, on his hand automatically rebooted the system, and it also started to cause an electrical charge. This hero was electrocuted, and his heart began to beat. Even though he is an ordinary man can become a hero, you just need to believe in yourself and not be afraid of others. Now he was very motivated, looking into the face of death. So the hero punched the leader right in the stomach. At this time, Hwarang didn't even care that he suddenly hung up abruptly. It didn't matter anymore. This call caused their non-conversation with the trainee to be interrupted, so Hwoarang continued and asked what favor he wanted to ask him. Han Kang-Chi only wanted to save Yo Peng, but he can't do it alone, so he came to get help to do it together. This request made Hwoarang laugh very loudly. He even apologized for laughing so hard because he hadn't expected it. Now he realized that this trainee was even dumber than he thought. Hwoarang explained to him that he couldn't save young Poon, as he had killed a very famous man. Yo Poon was imprisoned for a good reason. He's a criminal. Heroes only save those who are in danger. There are heroes who save criminals and their kind. Han Kang-Chi, of course he understood all of this and recognized it. Han Kang-Chi also revealed that young Pun asked for a favor, namely to come get him. He was sure there must be a reason for it, and he believed him because they were a team after all. Hwoarang came up to him and said, "Try it if you can." Then there was an explosion and Han Kang-Chi flew out of the window. Hwoarang remembered like it was yesterday that he had told him, "I am silent." So he offered to kill him. If he manages to slit his neck here, he'll help you. Except Han Kang-Chi couldn't do that. Hwoarang was upset and didn't realize where his former spirit had gone. He thought he had the courage. Han Kang-Chi explained if he kills him, he won't be able to save young Poon, and just for that alone he was preparing to just knock it out, not kill it. Hwoarang realized that he had excellent enthusiasm. Hwoarang suggested, "Finish this faster." He was already starting to get tired. So he started blowing things up. To Hwoarang's surprise, Han Kang-Chi learned to fly and took them straight up to his top floor, after which Han Kang-Chi punched him with all his might. But Hwoarang managed to quickly bounce away. He didn't understand what this ignorant force was. And that punch, it's not just a powerful force, it's surrounded by a terrifying and strong aura. Still, a few seconds later, Han Kang-Chi managed to hit Hwoarang. Hwoarang guessed what he had gotten, all from young Poon. He gave him a gift that protects his skin from the ravages of the Hwoarang tribe. Hwoarang was beginning to think that young Pan was really supporting him. He was even a little jealous of him. Hwoarang liked that he wasn't just an assistant. Han Kang-Chi replied to him that it's not a gift, and he'll return it all to young Pun. And now, he's going to hit him with that power, and they're going to go save together for our first division. But as soon as he wanted to hit him, Hwoarang started telling him, "Filled with fire and sulfur. Welcome to hell."